That we had not gone to. Now you can apply to like 20 schools. Yep, Sharon does now. Well, that's why the acceptance rate is so
Sorry.
low.
Good evening. I'd like to reconvene this regular meeting of the City Council at 7:15. Would you all please rise and join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance? Thank you, Ann. Okay, so that the public doesn't wonder why, after sitting here waiting for us to start, why we're now going to recess the regular meeting of the City Council, but it's only briefly. So we are now going to recess this regular meeting of the City Council so that we can convene the Liquor Control Commission meeting. And so I will convene that Liquor Control Commission and recognize Commissioner Roof, the chair of the License Committee.
Thank you, President Wright. I will move that we adopt the agenda.
Moved by Councilor Roof, seconded by Councilor Mason. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of the agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We have the agenda. Commissioner Roof, item number 2.
Yes, I move that we adopt the consent agenda, taking the actions as indicated.
Councilor Roof has moved the consent agenda, seconded by Councilor Pine. Any discussions? Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of adopting the consent agenda and taking the actions indicated, please say aye.
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 Thank you very much. We have approved the consent agenda. Item number 3, the deliberative agenda, 3.01. Commissioner Roof.
Yes, 301, I'll move approval of a 2019-2020 first-class restaurant bar liquor license application for Faux Sun at 213 College Street, contingent upon fire marshal approval with all standard conditions.
Moved by Councilor Roof, seconded by Councilor Hanson. Thank you, Councilor Hanson. Any discussion on the motion?
President Wright.
Councilor Bush, Commissioner Busher.
Thank you. I did bring this to the chair of the Local Control Commission attention that the hours of operation for Friday and Saturday night say 9, maybe later. And so that seemed odd and thought that should be determined. Plus, when you get to the City Council agenda, 5.02, there's an indoor entertainment permit for this establishment that says that they're going to have indoor entertainment from 11 a.m. to 2 a.m., which goes beyond the hours of operation. So there's inconsistency.
Commissioner Roof.
That is correct. So we'll deal with what's in front of us here, and we can deal with the entertainment in a moment. I think we can just kind of strike the maybe later shouldn't be there. That's not a practice that we have whatsoever. So we can either move it forward with the understanding that it's not maybe later, the time certain is 9, or we can make an amendment to represent the wishes. I look to you for guidance, President Wright.
Councilor Busher, which are you?
I would accept the amended language or to remove maybe later so that it is clear that the hours of operation for every day are 11 to 9.
Okay.
Is that good?
Yes.
Okay. Any other discussion on this? Hearing none, with that language deleted. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes unanimously. Item number 3.02, Commissioner Roof.
302, I'll move approval of a 2019-2020 outside consumption permit application for Bangkok Bistro in the Alley, located at 191 College Street. Maximum 22 seats in the alley, 11 a.m. to 12 a.m. every day.
Moved by Councilor Roof, seconded by Councilor Tracy. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes unanimously. Item 3.03, Commissioner Roof.
Thank you, President Wright. 3.03, I'll move approval of a 2019-2020 outside consumption permit application for El Cortijo, located at 189 Bank Street, 10 seats, 10 a.m. to 11 a.m., 10 a.m. to 11 p.m. every day between 5/1/19 and 10/1/19.
Moved by Councilor Roof, seconded by Councilor Tracy. Discussion?
The motion should be 11 a.m.
11 a.m. to 11 p.m.
Yeah, you said 10 a.m., sorry.
Apologies.
11 a.m. to 11 p.m. Any further discussion or questions? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes unanimously. Item 3.04, Commissioner Roof.
Thank you, President Wright. 304, I'll move approval of a 2019-2020 outside consumption permit application for restaurant Poco at 55 Main Street with the following conditions. An encumbrance application needs to be submitted to DPW and approved by the City Council License Committee and City Council.
Moved by Councilor Roof, seconded by Councilor Pine. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes unanimously. Item number 4,
Move to adjourn.
move to adjourn by Councilor Roof, seconded by Councilor Pine. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We have adjourned the Liquor Control Commission meeting. And we will now reconvene. We'll actually convene now the City Council with Mayor presiding before going back to the regular City Council meeting. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, President Wright. I'll call on to order the City Council with Mayor presiding at 7:22 p.m. and would welcome motion on the agenda.
Move approval of the agenda.
Thank you. Second by Councilor Busher. Discussion. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Item number 2 is the consent agenda. Welcome motion regarding it, President Wright.
Move to approve the consent agenda and take the actions indicated.
Thank you. Is there a second? Second by Councilor Paul. Discussion. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? The consent agenda passes unanimously. And this brings us to, 3.01, which is an appointment to the Cemetery Commission for a term expiring on June 30th, 2021. Are there any nominations? Councilor Busher.
Yes, I'm pleased to nominate Nancy Kirby to the Cemetery Commission.
Excellent. Thank you, Councilor Busher. Are there any additional nominations? Are there any additional nominations? Okay. Looks like there are not, so we'll close the floor for nominations. Is Nancy Kirby here? Would she like to address the City Council with Mayor presiding? If she's not, we will, are there any further discussion? Okay, we'll go to a vote. All those in favor of appointing Nancy Kirby to the Cemetery Commission, please say aye.
Aye.
Are there any no votes? Nancy Kirby is appointed unanimously. Congratulations, Nancy. Thank you for your service. 3.02 is a vehicle for hire board for term expiring June 30th, 2021. Floor is open for nominations. Councilor Pine.
I'd like to place in nomination the name of Bethany Whitaker.
Excellent. Are there any additional nominations? Would anyone else like to make a nomination? We're going to close the floor for nominations. Councilor Pine, would you like to say anything further about the nominee?
Just that Ms. Whitaker's career has been devoted to a series of progressively advanced responsibilities around transportation from a consulting perspective to her role is primarily to ensure that our transportation infrastructure is really planned and designed to serve people first and the planet as well, but really has, I think, brings a wealth of experience. We should be grateful to have her.
Thank you, Councilor Pine. Is Bethany Whitaker here tonight? Would she like to offer any remarks? We will go to a vote. All those in favor of the nomination, please say aye.
Aye.
Are there any no votes? Congratulations, Bethany, on your unanimous appointment. And without objection, the City Council with Mayor presiding is adjourned at 7:25 p.m.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I will now reconvene the regular City Council meeting at 7:25. And we will actually go to item number 3, which is the public forum, which is for a time certain of 7:30, but we can start it 5 minutes early because we have plenty of people speaking to go past that time. So we'll open the public forum with Chris Hadsel, to be followed by Charles Messing. And everyone, please just be sure to speak closely into the microphone so that everybody in the audience can hear you and that Channel 17 can hear you. You have 3 minutes to speak. When the middle light goes off, you're winding down to about a minute, and when the red light goes off, you need to conclude your remarks. Ms. Hadsel, welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. I wanted to just briefly welcome all the new commissioners to the curtain. This is your advertising curtain from the 1930s, painted by a wonderful woman from New Hampshire named Lucretia Rogers. And Lucretia's daughter has come to see this curtain herself. She's 95 years old. So on this curtain we have Lipa's, which is the only business that's still in business. We have Shepherd and Hamel. Some of you will remember Shepherd and Hamel up in the blimp. That statue obviously never has existed anywhere in Vermont. It's an imaginary street, it's an imaginary statue, and it's part of the whole fantasy world of these scenic curtains. At one point, this stage had a full set of curtains, which are now all gone. I don't have any photographs, I just have pieces of lumber that are up in the catwalk, and that's all that's left of them. But this is part of about 200 of these historic painted stage scenery pieces that we have restored as part of Curtains Without Borders. In fact, the very last one is next week in Tunbridge, and then every last one of them in Vermont will have been restored. So I just wanted to welcome introduce the new people. Kurt has seen it many times before, but I hope you enjoy it. It does get brought down sometimes for New Year's Eve, sometimes for folk festivals, but not often because it is fragile, and as you can see, there's a certain amount of stress on the fabric. But I just wanted to say that this is our curtain. We have one. So that's it.
Thank you, Ms. Hadsel. Appreciate that. Charles Messing is up next, to be followed by Jean Bergman. Mr. Messing, welcome.
Thank you, Councilor Wright. Nice to see you all. New faces. Everybody who's happy to see me returned, thank you. Everybody who's sorry to see I've returned, sorry. But here I am, and that's a great curtain. It's wonderful. I'm here because of the free College Street shuttle. And most of the people who find it most important to have that shuttle are not here because they go to sleep early, or they're pitching a tent somewhere, or they live elsewhere. The tourists love the shuttle. Everyone feels that it's very hospitable to have the free shuttle, and it's very important to have it bring enough for the whole class. Okay, so it is very important, and I'm sure that there's some way to work it out. I spoke to GMT, someone at GMT, and they said it was still in the air. It was still to be decided, and I know that it has something to do with all of you, making sure to let them know that we need it. We have had it, and it's very important to everyone who uses it, and it's very important that it be there when poor people need to go to the hospital, when people are too tired to walk up from Pine Street with all their groceries, when they finally make it in to college from where they are out there on Pine Street. Yes, so we have to keep it. I mean, we're already closing the park for 2 years, and keeping the free College Street shuttle will keep us looking open instead of looking like, well, this was a bad year to come to this town. It's really important, and I hope you all think the same way. And gosh, I love having this thing and I can watch the numbers count down. That is so great. Like what I did last time, played well on TV. And TV, yes. Hello, everybody out there. Tell them that we need the free College Street shuttle. We need it. We really need it. I used it. And all the people in my building who are now in bed, they use it. No one can believe that it's being taken away, and it shouldn't be. It shouldn't be taken away, ever. It's wonderful.
There you go, Mr. Messing. And you know we all are happy to see you.
Thank you.
Gene Bergman, to be followed by Sandy Wynn. Good evening, Mr. Bergman. Welcome.
Evening, President Wright and all my fellow city councilors. You know, I was a city councilor, so I'll try not to use all my time. But I'm going to ask you, the council, to hold hearings on GMT's proposal to start charging fares for the College Street shuttle and to do everything that you possibly can to save the free service. Free service is very important to low-income people going to the hospital. It connects the downtown and the waterfront, especially for people who are having a hard time getting up and down that steep College Street hill. And so it's especially important for you to do everything that you can to keep it. You have representatives there. You have the TOOC. I hope that you hold hearings and do what's necessary. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bergman. Sandy Wynn, to be followed by Ann Taylor. Good evening, Ms. Wynn. Welcome.
Good evening. Sorry, no chocolates tonight.
Unbelievable.
So
Your time is up.
you just can't win, can you? So tonight I want to talk about the neighborhood project report that you're going to be approving tonight. On page 10, there's a quote, since 2007, there are 749 more student beds at UVM. I'm sure that's correct. What I'd like to see added to that statement is, per UVM data, and I have it with me, during that same time period, UVM increased its student population by 2,000 students. So they got 749 beds, and they increased the population 2,000. On page 13, it reports that there are 3,100 students living off campus. Please add that per UVM data handed to the city, there are 4,007 living off campus. That's 10,300 minus 6,293 if you want the exact number. 900 extra students not reflected in this report is a lot of extra students. It's a big deal. How to help the market bring down the value of rental student homes. Please don't provide rehab money. Many lenders already do that. Please don't provide money to buy homes. Don't reward irresponsible landlords. If the city does its job, the market will do its job and punish the landlords that should be punished. So what should the city's job be? Pressure UVM to build more housing and make it affordable. Pressure UVM to lift the dry campus status. UVM needs to accept responsibility for its student drinking problems, not push it into our neighborhoods. Affect the return on investment, ROI, drives the problem of homes, put a dent in the cash flow, and you will bring values down. How do you do that? We need a reassessment, folks, and we need it now. This November, a $2 million multifamily sold. It was assessed at $1 million. That's a big difference. There are lots of other homes with equally that number of different landlords are getting a really nice ride. I grant you that homeowners will also pay a price, but the landlords, that's a nice giveaway. Get serious about fines for violation. And my favorite, as you all know, is we need to enforce the four unrelated, not just enforce it, but I really would love to have the administration publicly state we are really going to support this. When the administration said that, it made a difference. It really did, and I can prove it. Beef up the minimum housing inspections. Let's get some periodic fire safety inspections as well, and enforce the lot coverage. You will affect their ROI. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Nguyen. Ann Taylor will give us some colorful remarks, I'm sure, to be followed by Jonathan Chappell-Soka. Ms. Taylor, welcome.
Thank you. I haven't seen you all for a while. I've been skiing in Utah. Supposed to be 5 weeks. It ended up 6 weeks because I was crashed into by a snowboarder. There is some relativity to what I'm going to discuss tonight. Okay, I didn't know when I should be here to, as a physical therapist and someone who is a crash and burn girl who gets injured a lot. When I was chained to the tree on the waterfront 4 years ago, it wasn't just the tree. It was me questioning people for 2 weeks. And what I found out is pedestrians are very scared of bicyclists because the bicyclists do not communicate and they go too fast. So pedestrians are like afraid of the bicyclists. So I want to say I'm not into having electrical bicycles all over that bike path. I know we've decided that we would allow Segway, and I was just told by Ms. Shannon that they're not electrical, so good. So anyways, let's not let a ton of electrical bicycles because it's a narrow pathway. And we need all bicycles to have bells, like ring, ring, I'm on your left. I'm on your right. I'm passing you. And in skiing, I've been promoting for 2 decades improved communication called yodelay-lee-hoo. That's why the Swiss yodel. If you're higher up the mountain than somebody down below you, it's your responsibility not crash into somebody below you. So we need to have speed limits for the bicycles on the bike path, and we need to promote communication. There has to be, I'm passing you on your left. There has to be communication, and we've lost this in the ski world. And it's a good thing I'm a physical therapist and know how to recover from injuries. And I am working with Win Smith, the owner of Sugarbush, because he happens to be the president of the board of directors of all the Ski Owners Association of the U.S., and we have got to do something in the world of skiing, just like the world of bicycling, to improve communication. And we need to have speed limits for the bicycles. And maybe far away, there aren't so many pedestrians, but maybe the thing to do is to identify where the greatest number of pedestrians are and create speed limits and certainly promote communication. I'm on your left. I'm on your right. Yodelay-lee-hoo. Sing, communicate, and don't crash into people. And may we, you counselors, work on this issue to keep things safer for everybody.
Thank you, Ms. Taylor.
Thank you.
You did not let me down. Jonathan Chappell-Soka is up next, to be followed by Charles Winkleman. Good evening. Welcome.
Good evening, and thank you. I'm Jonathan Chappell-Soka. I'm one of the newer members of the Wards 1 and 8 NPA Steering Committee. I want to read to you a resolution that we passed at our April meeting, and I think I sent it out to all the council members. I'm afraid I got some people late because I did. And And it's on a subject, it's about sidewalk safety, and it's a subject that had been discussed at a couple of previous meetings, and in April, we presented a resolution that was passed by both wards at the April meeting. Whereas Burlington takes pride in being a walkable and accessible city, and whereas sidewalks must be safe for residents year-round, and whereas weather conditions for the past several years, particularly the multiple freeze-thaw cycles we experienced this past winter, created and highlighted large numbers of dangerous, icy, and/or flooded and otherwise unnavigable stretches of sidewalk across the city. And whereas there are numerous uneven sidewalk sections that are impassable in a wheelchair and present significant trip and fall hazards to all, and whereas these poor sidewalk conditions adversely affect the health, safety, welfare, and quality of life of all residents, and in particular those with accessibility challenges year-round, and whereas the effects of climate change will likely exacerbate these problems in the coming years, therefore we request that the city and DPW take immediate steps to address Burlington's acute sidewalk safety and accessibility issues citywide, rather than postponing work until a given stretch of sidewalk can be fully rebuilt according to the strategic plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chapel-Soka. Charles Winkleman is up next to be followed by Brian Waters. Good evening, Mr. Winkleman. Welcome.
Good evening. Thank you. In 2013, Wayne Brunette was killed by Officer George Tebow in the New North End. In 2015, Mr. Tebow was accused of domestic assault, but was kept on the force. In 2018, a 7 Days article showed that 2 witnesses had testimony that directly contradicted Officer Tebow's statement. The council did nothing in response to that. The mayor did nothing in response to that. The police commission did nothing in response to that. Chief Del Pozo did nothing in response to that. In 2016, Phil Grennan was killed by officers in his own home. Del Pozo and the council promised de-escalation policies and civilian oversight. And yet last week, Chief Del Pozo, with the support of Mayor Weinberger, said that Officer Campbell was justified in walking up to Douglas Kilburn, a man who a moment before had believed his wife had died, telling him, depending on whose account you believe, to either, quote, get the fuck out of here, or to, quote, shut your fat fucking mouth. The officer grabbed Kilburn, and Kilburn punched him, which is against the law. That officer then responded by punching Kilburn multiple times, punching Douglas multiple times, yes, breaking his jaw in multiple places, breaking his eye, and fracturing his skull. And somehow that behavior was justified. Kilburn died, Campbell walked out unharmed. What will change, counselors? Who will be held responsible for this? You are the only ones left to be a check on the mayor and the police chief. What changes will we see from you? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Winkleman. Brian Waters is up next to be followed by Kelly Devine. Good evening, Mr. Waters. Welcome.
Cops lie. It's almost an axiom for dealing with police matters, something to always keep in the back of your head. Cops lie. And when they aren't, they're often stretching or distorting the truth or trying to cover something up. But I'm not here to talk about the medical examiner's report. I'm here to talk about a tragedy and a gruesome act of violence that everyone here is dealing with in one way or another. The narrative that we have is the narrative of the police. And it leaves a legacy that Mr. Kilburn's family will have to deal with for the rest of their lives. We're told that Mr. Kilburn was killed for being bellicose, for creating a disturbance, that he was killed for being in the way. Because I know that cops lie. I know that the release of footage will add a new thread to this narrative, and I think it will be one that will humanize Mr. Kilburn. I think it will show a member of this community, our community, distraught over the physical health of a dear loved one, becoming upset, hurt, and defensive as he was verbally abused by a Burlington police officer. And I won't belabor Mr. Kilburn's health because I think it's been belabored too much, but I think the video will show an escalation by a physically fit 29 or 30-year-old man and a defenseless Mr. Kilburn losing his life in a brutal, visceral act of violence that has no place on our streets.
Thank you, Mr. Waters. Kelly Devine is up next to be followed by Steve Goodkind. Good evening, Ms. Devine.
Good evening.
Welcome.
Thank you. I'm here to speak to the resolution related to increasing access to publicly available bathrooms. As some of the councilors know, we had a resolution related to this last year, and part of that resolution called on our organization as well as CEDO and the Church Street Marketplace to look at possible available solutions for bathrooms, make an inventory of publicly available bathrooms, and come up with some possible suggestions. We did some research on other cities, and that document was already submitted to the council. So, on behalf of our members, we still think that it's really important that we are able to, as a community, address the need for more publicly available bathrooms in the downtown and waterfront. And so, just offering the help and support of our organization if we can continue to play a role in that. I wanted to mention in the resolution there was a specific call to take a look at the bathrooms that are on the waterfront. And we have a group called the Waterfront Action Group who meets once a month, not in the summer, but most of the year. And they've really have put out a call to try to work with the Burlington Parks and Rec Department to see if we can especially have some of those public bathrooms open when we have one of those unusually warm days in the shoulder seasons, whether people are flocking to North Beach or they're coming downtown. Our lake is one of our favorite places in the city, and when it's warm out, we all like to be there. And so that group has been asking if we can extend the season or maybe have some kind of plan to be able to open up those facilities when those warm days come, because it does create a challenge on the waterfront if people don't have facilities to use when they come down to visit Burlington. So I would encourage the council to vote in favor of this resolution and to help continue the important work on making sure that both our residents, community members, as well as our visitors have reasonable and available access to public bathrooms. One of the other pieces that we looked at was, as folks know, our organization's been working on some parking-related issues, and we have looked at some other cities that have effectively used their public parking garages as a way to offer bathroom opportunities. And since some of those facilities have electricity and water available, that may be a resource we could look at reasonably. So thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Devine. Steve Goodkind is up next, to be followed by Stephen Marshall. Good evening, Mr. Goodkind. Welcome.
Thank you, President Wright. By the way, I do think segways are electric.
Could you pull the microphone in closer, Mr. Goodkind? I couldn't hear that.
I do believe segways are electric, by the way. I think earlier they said they weren't. Anyway, I think it's now abundantly clear that the city has no intention of repaying any of the money that taxpayers provided for the construction of Burlington Telecom. The city is on record now with the Public Utility Commission of the state of Vermont saying they don't believe that any of the money from the sale of BT is taxpayer money, and that they have other uses for it. Hopefully the courts will think differently of this when it gets to them. Not so well known about the issues with BT is that other money was exchanged around the same time as the sale to Schurz. My letter to the City Council, which you folks have copies of, explains that this was the cash assets that Burlington Telecom had accumulated from its operations. It was ratepayer money, about $6.6 million, and probably about $1,000 per customer, which sounds rather astounding. The foxes guarding the henhouse, with a wink from the city, ran BT so as to maximize its cash assets. This included putting a rate increase in at the last minute that was totally unnecessary. Then, as planned, they took advantage of the Blue Water deal, the P-Corps deal, and divided up the booty when Burlington Telecom was liquidated. The taxpayers got nothing and the ratepayers got screwed. How things like this, like City Hall Park, are allowing cynics to proceed without financing, how does this happen in our city? I don't know for sure, but one big factor seems to be this administration's blind ambitions that are preventing them from seeing that the public's interests are really being looked after. Too many optics, not enough vision. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Goodkind. Steve Marshall is up next, to be followed by Jennifer Decker. Good evening, Mr. Marshall.
Good evening. Where's the cup for the water? I'm sitting here because just this evening, Adam, Mr. Roof, told me that there was a resolution on the table for supporting the opening of bathrooms around the city. I'm a little perplexed because I went on the city agenda and I couldn't find the resolution. I wonder, just as a first note, maybe we could do a better job of making documents available through board docs. But that's an aside. The important thing I want to talk about is the bathrooms. I'd like us to look at this issue in a global perspective. Public hygiene has been an issue since the beginning of civilization. Right now in India, they are trying to convince people to always use toilets. Can you imagine what the world is like with excrement all over the place? We do a decent job of keeping our city clean, but let's remember that the human need for relief is universal. This is about every person who lives in, visits our city, and it is essential that if we want to be a progressive, forward-looking, lively city, that we provide bathroom facilities everywhere. Now, the comments by Ms. Devine were in reference to downtown and Waterfront. This is of particular interest to the business community. I sit here and speak on behalf of the entire city, of all of the residents of the city and everyone who visits here, that bathrooms are needed in every corner and everywhere in between, so that people can have a comfortable walk down the bike path in the intervale, or walking down Church Street when you don't want to go to a restaurant. Where do you go? Everywhere there needs to be a place to use a facility. In the Public Safety Committee, and we didn't, apparently this was not put in the resolution, but in the Public Safety Committee we talked about wanting to have all of the bathrooms that are currently available in city parks opened and maintained. I would like to emphasize the importance of maintenance. There was a contemplation of buying some expensive bathroom thing that was going to go in City Hall Park, and I want to draw the lesson out of that. It's much, much better for the economy, for the people, if we spend money to hire people than if we spend money to create advanced technology bathrooms. If you could have many, many more bathrooms for your money, it employs people, and you create opportunities for people who perhaps aren't really ready for other kinds of jobs. So all around, it's a great idea for the city. Please support the idea, the resolution.
Thank you, Mr. Marshall. Jennifer Decker is up next, to be followed by the final speaker of the public forum tonight, Karen Long. Good evening, Ms. Decker. Welcome.
Thank you. I live in South Burlington, and I appreciate the opportunity to be able to share my thoughts here. I, too, came to talk about Douglas Kilburn and Phil Grennan. And I also just wanted to mention the name of my friend, Kay Borneman, who was killed in a high-speed chase. I don't know if other folks, I know some other names have been mentioned here tonight, if other folks would like to say the names of people who've been killed by escalating responses by police in our community. Douglas Kilburn could have been my brother or my friend, and I would just like to invite everyone to spend the rest of my time, if we could, in a moment of silence. I would just like to thank everyone and just thank those of you especially who asked the tough questions today, and those of us who won't let these stories be forgotten. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Decker. Karen Long is the final speaker tonight. Good evening, Ms. Long. Welcome.
So, I came to talk about the neighborhood project, which I welcome the efforts. I have not read it thoroughly. It's kind of a long report.
I'm having trouble hearing you, Ms. Long.
Sorry. I'm here to talk about the neighborhood project, which is there going to be speak out after the presentation, or do I speak now?
Speak now.
Okay, thanks. I did take a walk and go to other meetings, take a walk with a consultant. And in my neighborhood in Ward 1, there are a lot of homes that have been converted to large groups of adults without adequate parking, without storm windows, a lot of minimum housing things that are in violation. I'm not sure that, to me, the basic obvious thing has been to enforce our minimum housing and enforce our zoning. That's been a tough thing. I've been working since 1997 trying to get that. And right now there's sort of a blow up on Willard Street with a property that has had a very large party this weekend. And I know there's other people pleading with the council and the city to help them on Brooks, I think it's Avenue, near the campus, also Ward 1, because 2 owner-occupied single-family homes, or 2 owner-occupied, one was a duplex, has recently been purchased by landlords, and people are parking on the lawn. I'm not sure why we allow that. It baffles me when I walk downtown and I see all the dirt backyards and side yards, and our own city greenbelt is not green because we're allowing people to make a single driveway, a double wide driveway, and pack down that soil. We know we're ruining our lake. We're spending a lot of money on stormwater runoff. So there's so many basic common sense things we could do. I'm hoping this report will set a fire underneath everybody, and especially the mayor, to do something. We are pleading for saving our neighborhoods. We'd like to stay living in town. And I guess, that's the thing that just really baffles me, why we can't get enforcement of basic laws for zoning. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Long. And that was the final speaker in the public forum tonight, so we will close that item. Thank you, everyone, for sharing your opinions on the variety of topics tonight. Item number 4 is the consent agenda. Is there a motion? Councilor Busher?
Yes, I'll move to adopt the consent agenda and take the actions indicated.
Moved by Councilor Busher, seconded by Councilor Paulino. All those in favor of passing the consent agenda and taking the actions indicated, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes unanimously. And we will move forward onto the deliberative agenda. 5.01 is an appointment to fence viewer. Councilor Mason.
Thank you, President Wright. I'd like to move the name of Gordon Dragoon as a nominee for the fence viewer. Mr. Dragoon is a young Ward 5 resident who is looking to get involved.
Moved by Councilor Mason. Is there a second? Second, Councilor Shannon. Is Mr. Dragoon here? Did you wish to say anything? It's up to you. You don't have to. You don't have to. Just wanted to offer it to you. Okay. Any other nominations? Any other? Councilor Busher?
No nomination, but I just wanted to thank you
Councilor
for
Busher,
coming
could you pull that in a
forward.
little closer?
Certainly. I just wanted to thank him for coming forward. Thank you very much.
Yes, we all thank you for that. Any other nominations? Hearing none, all those in favor of Mr. Dragoon's nomination as fence viewer, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Congratulations. Thank you for sharing your time for the city. 5.02 is an indoor entertainment permit application. Councilor Roof.
Thank you, President Wright. I'll move 502, move to approve a 2019-2020 indoor entertainment permit application for Faux Sun with a condition to allow indoor entertainment between 11 a.m. and 11 p.m. every day, and also with all standard conditions.
Moved by Councilor Roof, seconded by Councilor Tracy. Councilor Busher.
President Wright, thank you. On the Local Control Commission, we approved hours of operation from till 9 p.m. So I don't understand this. Does that mean the sale of alcohol to 9 p.m., but the business can stay open until 11 p.m.? I'm not clear.
Councilor Roof.
Yep, so the motion here is matching up the 11 a.m. to 9 p.m. time designation on the other application. Now, this was a mistake that was on this application, pushing it till 2 a.m., and so this is a correction.
Okay, so that's not what it was.
Councilor Busher.
So I misunderstood you. I thought you said till 11 p.m. So it's 11.
Allow me to repeat, I'm sorry to interrupt. To allow indoor entertainment between 11 a.m. and 9 p.m.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilor Busher. Any further discussion on this item? Hearing none, all those in favor of this, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes unanimously. And brings us to item number 5.03. That's a communication from representatives from Brookfield regarding an update on City Place, Burlington. Brookfield representatives. Good evening, welcome, thank you for being here. And if you could both identify yourselves, and please pull the microphones in really close to you so Channel 17 picks it up.
Sure, absolutely. Good evening. My name is Will Vogel. I'm a Senior Vice President with Brookfield Properties Development.
I'm Chelsea Ziegelbaum. I'm a Development Manager at Brookfield.
We work with Chase Martin, who was here before you in January, and we represent the Burlington Town Center project. So thank you for the opportunity tonight to be here. Mayor and...
I apologize.
Sorry.
I need you to both pull the microphones in
A little closer.
really close.
How's that?
That's good.
I'm going to touch it to my chin here, so I really have the right...
That's okay. That's what we need.
The right perspective. So again, thank you. Appreciate the opportunity to be here. There's really two things I want to focus on tonight. One is communication and how important that is to us, and how important this forum is to us, and also the progress that we've made to date. So in January, we came before you. We said that we were bringing all of our resources to bear on this project, and that's 100% what we've done since then. We also said that we would come back to you and keep you apprised and keep the city in communication. So that communication has taken many forms. We are here every week. I think Chelsea and I have been here every week since January, and much of the time spent with Jeff Glassberg, the representative from the city, working through a whole host of things. We spent a lot of time also with stakeholders, our neighbors at Redstone and the folks with Church Street Marketplace and Burlington Art. And fundamentally, we are 100% on the ground, focused on the day-to-day project and moving it forward. But this forum is particularly important to us. And so tonight we want to make sure that we're giving you an update. I do want to say our goal is to give you as much information as we possibly can. However, simply because of where we are in the process, there are certain boxes that haven't been checked yet, certain key milestones that we haven't reached. So I don't know that I can answer every question that you have. I can, however, speak to some significant progress that we're really proud of and pleased with, and that is helping this project move forward toward commencement of construction. So let me just speak to some of those particular things. First of all, we have a fully executed term sheet with Bank of the Ozarks. That's the financing vehicle for the project. We have 100% complete construction documents out to bid. Art Klugo from PC is here tonight, our construction manager. And in the coming weeks, we'll be getting more information on those numbers and how the bids come back to us. UVMMC, who is an absolutely vital and important part of this project, has been a big focus of ours over the past few months. We're now at a point where we fundamentally have addressed all the key milestones for UVMMC and are working closely with them on refining documentation so we can get things on that front fully buttoned up. We also, as I mentioned, continue to work with Jeff. The public-private partnership here is a meaningful thing. I come from 30 years of development experience with a focus on public-private partnerships, so we know how important that is to you and how important it is to us. And we want to make sure that we have all of those pieces working properly and understanding those numbers as well. We also have at Brookfield a wide array of subject matter experts and disciplines in residential and retail, and I think Chase mentioned to you that we were bringing that expertise to bear, and we've made significant progress as those groups look at this project and determine all the right things that need to happen and to ensure its success. There are many other examples of our progress, but I think that more than anything, I want to point out that it is a complicated project. There are things that we're still working through. There are certain key milestones, as I mentioned, that we need to hit. And as we do, we'll have more clarity for you on specific timing of things going forward. However, everything we're doing, all of our focus is 100% tied to reaching that milestone and getting this project under construction, and I really want to emphasize that. So ultimately, for us, the trust that we build with you is a function of being here and sharing information that we know we can share and not conjecture where we're not sure exactly the timing. So that's a key point that I think I want to make this evening. We have been, I think, on the ground and closely involved in this project over about the last 3 months, and a huge amount of effort has taken place during that time. So essentially, the key message is we're glad to be here. We're looking forward to making this project a reality. We need to get through a series of important but normal course milestones, and as we do, we'll be able to come back to you with more clarity on our timing to get the project under construction.
Thank you. Could you both repeat your last names? I did not hear, some of us didn't hear them when at the beginning.
Sure. Last name is Vogel. That's V as in Victor, O-E-G-E-L-E.
And my last name is Ziegelbaum.
Say that again.
Ziegelbaum.
Okay. Thank you. All right. Questions from the City Council. Councilor Tracy, then Councilor Busher.
Thank you very much, President Wright. So I appreciate you coming and providing an update. One of the issues that has come up pretty continuously since the demolition began and then stopped has been that of public awareness around the project and getting regular updates. When we received an update from Brookfield back in January, I mentioned this exact issue and asked for Brookfield to do better, essentially, to provide more regular updates to the council, to provide more regular updates to the public, and to really communicate that information, because folks deserve to know what's going on with their downtown and to get updates. And if there's anything that they can know, I think that they absolutely should. In the intervening time, we really haven't heard much in the way of updates, and I think that's problematic and continues to really raise a lot of questions for folks in the public about the project, doubts as a result of those questions, and in other cases, anger at you folks and Mr. Sinix and others involved. So I really think that this is an issue that needs to be rectified in terms of regular updates, and if you are going to provide those updates, to do so regularly. And then also with communication. I received a call from Mr. Quigley right there in the front row, letting me know that, asking me for comment on Mr. Sinix's remarks that the project would start construction on May 6th. And I said, well, that's news to me. And I find it incredibly insulting that I would be promised in a public meeting better answers and then to have to hear those answers reported back to me to the meeting or from the media. So I'm asking, what do you plan to do better? What are you willing to commit to tonight to make sure that you have better channels of communication with this council and with the public?
Understood, and you raised some fair points that I understand can be frustrating for you. I will just tell you that the process for us has involved digging into a lot of things and focusing on fundamentals like getting the drawings complete and out for bid, focusing on financing, the typical normal milestones. There has been a tremendous amount of communication, although not necessarily in a public forum. And I think that's because we don't want to stand in front of people and not be able to give them clarity and specifics. So our focus has really been on advancing the fundamentals of the project. I can also say, however, that we're really now just on the threshold of beginning more of those frequent meetings, directly engaging with the community, with the people that are around us, because the last thing we want is a project where the dirt is flying and the piles are being pounded and people don't know what's happening. So we get it. I understand your comment. It's a fair point, but we are committed to better communication going forward.
So I don't feel as though you've answered my question, sir. I really would like to know specifically what you're going to do to improve your communication with this council and with the public. You spoke of generalities and improving communication, but nothing specific.
Well, again, I think we look to the mayor and council president to give us guidance on the best timing to come to the council. So those aren't our decisions. We're really looking for guidance when we come before you. And we're sharing where we are with the project. So that when we come before you, we can tell you something of substance. So I can't speak to specifically when we'll be back. Again, we're going to look to the mayor and council president to give us clarity on when we'll come back. But I can tell you that all of our effort is toward getting this project under construction. So that's as it relates to this body. Our goal is to communicate with you as frequently and as effectively as we possibly can. But we want to make sure we have something to say that has substance so that your questions aren't left without an answer. We are beginning, and I think in the coming weeks you'll see some of the first meetings where we're looking to meet with the community and specifically the people around us. And then the rest of the outreach has been very much one-on-one, and frankly, a lot of it with myself directly on stakeholders and people that I know are immediately affected by and have interest in the project. So it's really happening on many levels. And to be honest, I don't know how to provide more specificity than that.
Okay.
Thank you, Councilor Tracy. Councilor Busher, then Councilor Mason.
So thank you. So can you confirm that things are going to begin in May, as the media reported, or no?
I cannot.
Cannot.
As I said, we've worked against a series of assumptions, and I think there were ideas of timing that were forwarded, in this case by our partner. We are at a point where, while we've made significant progress, until we simply get through some of the key milestones that every development project needs to get through, I don't want to give you a specific date.
That's okay. That's all right. I don't need you to go further than that.
Yes.
So I understand the prioritization that you went through, but I guess what I'm trying to say is that the city council, we're elected by the people, the residents in Burlington, and they're stakeholders also in this. They're really important stakeholders. And so I feel that we should be right up there at the top of your list. We shouldn't be 7th or 8th or 9th or 10th. And so I am concerned about where the placement of the city council is.
Sure.
With you and your team. So that's my observation just listening to you. The other thing is that with an organization like yours, I would wonder, wouldn't you have a PR person or a communications person that could, in a more timely fashion, put out written communications with timely tidbits of information that are important that could come to the council, not always requiring your presence. Certainly, I appreciate you being here and would like you to be here on some type of schedule, but I do believe that that doesn't halt communication. Communication can come to us in a number of different formats. And so for me, it would be really important to get that communication. The other thing is that I sit here and the faces and the people change that represents the development, and I just want to make sure that as you bring in people, these experts that you're relying on, that they are familiar with Vermont, with the region, which is upper state New York, New Hampshire, Vermont, and close to Canada, understand the competition, understand the environment they're working in, and really appreciate that environment and embrace it. Because initially when this project began, when you were gathering ideas, I felt so connected. I felt so connected, and I think the community felt connected. He's raising his hand to be recognized. That's what's going on. But anyways, I felt so connected. But then there was a disconnect when the project started. And I feel that disconnect continues, and what we're trying to do is come back together to feel connected and to feel supported around this project and around what this will bring to our community. So I'm just sharing my opinion with you regarding the process and the communication.
Yeah. And I will just say those are all very fair points. I am long overdue to be meeting with each of you individually, and that time is coming. Again, the focus has been sort of on the nuts and bolts of the heavy lifting of the key pieces. So we have some ground to make up on that side of things. Give us the opportunity to do so.
May I say one last thing?
You may.
And tonight, I know you came forward with what you felt you could share, but I didn't learn really anything from this communication. I just want to be honest
No.
So, no, and that's not being a criticism, but I know that you feel that, this is all you can share, but I feel like I don't really have anything to share with my constituents.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I understand.
Thank you, Councilor Busher. I do want to, just to be fair to the representatives from Brookfield, that the mayor and I talked about the report a little while back. I think it was in March, and it was determined that there wasn't a lot of more information to be shared at that point, and the mayor did give a report to the city council, relatively brief report. I do understand the frustration of councilors that Mr. Sinix gave some information that appears not to have been accurate in terms of the timeline, over-promising and under-delivering at this point. But the mayor we did give a brief report from the mayor and said that we would be coming back with a report from Brookfield. So I want to be fair to you as partners with us, that we want to work together to make this project happen.
Thank you.
And with that, I'll go to Councilor Mason.
Thank you, President Wright. Thank you both for being here. My first question sort of goes back to a comment that Mr. Martin made in January, although I don't have my notes in front of me. There was some concern about, maybe softness in retail or residential and, modifications of the project, not necessarily in size, but just in terms of the makeup. I'm curious, over the last 3 months, have you completed that work, and, are you prepared to discuss, any potential changes to the scope of the project from what was initially announced?
Sure, it's a great question. The answer is the project that is out for bid is the project that you've seen.
Okay.
It is not, we have not changed the nature of the project. In something as large and complex as this, is it possible that there wouldn't be refinements down the road? Potentially. But what I can tell you today is what is out for bid is what was approved, and certainly, like any smart developer, we're looking at markets and we're looking at trends. But right now, what we have out for bid is what was approved.
Okay, that's helpful. I think my second question or sort of comment is a little follow-on. I appreciate it. I'm not going to ask you for a date, but I do think the public is finding a hard time believing that this is happening, and I respect you're here and you're spending money. I guess without having you commit, when are you expecting to get your construction bids back, and when are you going to be in a position where we can finally come together and say shovels going into the ground? Or again, I'm not asking you, but I'm saying, like, is that a month? Is it 6 months? Is it a year? We're legitimately getting comments about the hole in the ground, with a public that is skeptical that this project is actually moving forward. I respect how much you're doing behind the scenes, but that's not visible. So the push for dates are to prove to the public that this is real.
Yeah, I understand. And telling you that I have a term sheet with a lender and that I have complete drawings out for bid, I realize doesn't provide that kind of clarity. But what we don't want to do is to give you conjecture.
Yep.
I can just say that nothing has changed in terms of our motivation to get the project under construction. We just need to make sure that we check the boxes, that we get through, the closing. I have a term sheet on a loan. I need to make sure I get through the closing of the loan. I need to make sure I understand the details of the GMP and that I can wrap all those things into a ball and I know what it is that I have. It's not a situation in my mind where the horizon goes out as far as you talked about, but our focus is as much on the near term of getting under construction as we can. I just don't want to stand here because I can't predict with certainty.
Sure.
And I want to stand here and tell you that I wasn't genuine the first time.
Okay, so then my only advice, which I think you're hearing from multiple, is if you can give us that information as it comes along, that provides comfort, not just to the council, but to the public.
Absolutely.
This is a real project, and it is going to happen.
Understood.
So, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Mason. I have Councilor Roof next, to be followed by Councilor Jang, Hanson, and then Paulino.
Thank you, President Wright. I'll be quick, and I'm going to continue on the comments from Councilor Mason and actually just ask for a little bit more. Also, thank you for coming in the update for what it's worth. You mentioned you need to go through and check the boxes. I think part of the issue that we and others in the community are having is we don't know what those boxes are. And I think that we sum that up in saying, hey, when are you going to get a shovel in the ground, assuming then that you've checked all the boxes. But I wonder if I were to request that you share with us what those boxes are, and to the degree, you mentioned a few. You mentioned closing on financing and wrapping up with GMT. What is, from this point going forward, those boxes that need to be checked? You don't need to associate timelines with them because I understand that you can't guarantee the certainty on them. Is that a list that you could provide to us?
Well, I can say this. Clearly, the two that I mentioned are the most important, and they're important to any project because they translate to financing and cost. As I said before, Brookfield is a very deep organization, and we have come forward in a role as the managing member of this partnership to effectuate, as a function of protecting our interest in the project, to effectuate this development and get things going. We're bringing our teams into the project. In fact, they've toured the market recently, to Councilwoman Busher's comment. They've toured the market recently to make sure we understand what's unique about Burlington. Those are some of the kinds of things, because again, it does need to come down to how to build the right project for you and for us and for the community and for the patrons here. So fundamentally, it's those kinds of things. There's no magic to it. These are the fundamentals of development. We just don't want to speak ahead of having all that information, and as we have it, it will inform those answers, and we'll be the first ones to come here and share the timing with you.
Just a continuation. So I think that a lot of people out in the community, and maybe many around, I'll include myself on this, around this table, maybe are not professionals and understand from a basic level what the fundamentals of development are.
Yes.
And so again, I'll ask, is it possible for you to provide either in a checklist form or a short narrative of what the steps are that you'll be going through, something that we could share with our constituents? Because like Councilor Busher said, not quite sure what to do and go forward with to help this project along, because at least from my stance, I want to see this project proceed and be successful, and I think this could help.
I think we can provide some clarity for you.
Okay, great.
Councilor Jang.
Thank you, President, and welcome to the Queen City. Thank you for being here. And I think the French people, they say, Adam Roof m'a marché sur la langue, meaning what I wanted to ask, Adam Booth just asked it. What are those check boxes? You know, and it's still not clear. But I think my comment is, we have what we call neighborhood planning assemblies, you know, where the community come together, ask questions, you know, ask updates from city councilors. And all the time, I tell people, let's focus on the positive, which means this is going to happen, right? I was not here. I'm one of the new people here. But I am going back, and when I go back, still, I'm just going to say, oh, let's stay positive. You know what I mean? But you did mention that you speak regularly with Mr. Glassberg, and I'm pretty sure you speak with the mayor as well. Do you provide some type of updates to them, at least, even if it's not the city council?
Absolutely. I'm actually very appreciative of the liaison that Mr. Glassberg represents. It allows us to keep him informed and keep the city informed through him of the progress that we're making. We have bi-weekly what we call OAC, which is Owner Architect Contractor meetings. And before we start that meeting, Mr. Glassberg joins us for one specifically where we talk about the public improvement side of things. And you know, on that list of things that you talked about, the Councilman Roof is working through the complexities and the answers on the public-private partnership and how those funds will be used as effectively as possible. So yes.
Okay. So, and the boxes, and also you used key milestones. And I am new here. Can you remind me when this project was supposed to start? Not this spring, but when?
Well, are you asking historically when?
Yeah. Just a reminder.
I don't know that I know that specifically, but it was certainly to have started by now. A year ago? I don't actually know. Again, we have become a part of this team, and our goal is to get integrated into this community, and our absolute 100% charge is to get this project under construction. Our focus hasn't been the history. It's to take what we have right now and work with every single person we can to get to the finish line.
Thank you. And lastly is, let's assume it was supposed to start last year. And if those check boxes was not checked then, how likely, in a number from 0 to 10, how likely are we going to have this project started in this spring?
So you know, if I'm not going to give you specific dates, I'm not going to give you a specific numbers 1 to 10, right? But it's not because I don't want to, but I can just tell you that the same message Chase delivered in January, I'm delivering now, and that is one of the largest, if not largest, development and owner-managers of real estate in the world is focused on getting this project under construction. That was not the case a year ago, but that is the situation now. And I would just ask that you see that for what it is and understand our focus is no different than what we've been saying all along.
Thank you, Councilor Jang. Before I go to the next Councilor, I just want to add in. So you said that you would be able to get some clarity on some questions that Councilor Roof asked. Is there a timeline on that when you would be able to provide us with clarity?
Sure. I mean, give us a few days to put something together. I'm happy to outline, but you're going to see that these are normal course kinds of things that every developer goes through in order to make sure that the pieces of the puzzle are right and ready to start construction.
And you can give us, that'll be a written
Yes.
response to the whole council.
Yes.
Thank you. Councilor Hanson, then Paulino, then Pine, and Paul. Councilor Hanson.
Hi, how's it going? Thanks for coming in. Could you give us updates on the district heating component of this development?
So I have had some discussion with District Heat. It hasn't been the primary focus of a lot of what we've been doing. I know there's an initiative. I know there was a lot of progress that was made. I know, as I understand it, there's ongoing discussions with respect to the prospect of extending district energy, which is what I'm assuming you're asking about, right? But there are no specifics as it relates to district energy right now in terms of where we are in that process. It's just something we have not yet re-engaged with, but there is dialogue, and I have had discussions with the folks from District Energy, from I'm not recalling his name right now, but that is on our radar.
Are you still committed to participating in district heating and being one of the central hubs that makes this possible?
The honest answer is I don't know that anything has changed since the beginning when those commitments were made, but I know that process has gone through a long process, and there is still due diligence that they need to do, and we will be committed to be a part of that process. For District Energy to make sense for everyone, it has to make sense for us as well. And that involves a process of due diligence and analysis and review, and we're engaged in that. But I can't answer specifically because, to be honest, I don't know the status of the overall initiative. But I can tell you, the commitment we made and what you see in the development agreement is the same. Nothing has changed.
Would you be able to include an update on this and when you send around the updates in a few days? Because
I don't think so, because it's not the current focus of our effort. It's on our radar, but I don't know that there's reason for that to be a key part of what we're trying to update council on right now.
Okay. Well, the reason for me is that this is an incredibly important opportunity to address climate change in our community. It's also something that was promised within this project in order to secure votes for the project, the votes that enabled the project in 2017. So it's really important that that commitment is maintained. So that's why it's important.
Yes, again, nothing has changed in terms of the commitment. I would ask the question, what are you aware of in terms of the state of the progress of that initiative?
Well, if nothing's changed, that's what I want to hear. I just want to hear that you're still committed to it. That's what I'm asking.
And that's my answer.
Okay.
Thank you, Councilor Hanson. Mr. Mayor, do you need to jump in now, or is it timely for you to?
I just think, President Wright, thank you. I think Will's comments are fair. It's been, there's legislative action going on right now that is critical to the next step of the district energy system, and I think a broader update about where the initiative is sometime soon would be helpful to this conversation, I think, and the administration would be happy to provide that.
Okay, Councilor, we're into the Ps. Councilor Paulino, Pine, and Paul.
Thank you, President Wright. So just to go back to what Councilor Busher said about outreach, and I think we were at a loss about sort of how to remedy that problem. I think I would suggest that it would be helpful to us if you had a representative that would come out to our neighborhood planning assembly meetings to give them an update, because to them, you know, they hear it from us, but they don't really understand. You know, they don't understand how big of a partner you are in terms of your projects, the number of projects, how committed you are. And to hear that from us would be different than hearing it from you. The second piece is that as much as I would like to know about the progress and the details, I also would like to know what can we do, you know, what measures can we do for parking for people that have been taken away, as well as surrounding businesses, and maybe a further push for something else. I know you've taken some steps, but that would be something that if the project isn't going to be boots on the ground by June, that we could explore again.
Okay, understood.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilor Paulino. Councilor Pine.
Thank you, Mr. President. You spoke earlier about, I think, the key issue that we face as elected officials to represent the public, and that is that this is a public-private partnership. And so we're the folks on at this table who represent the public. And if you could, going forward, think about, just for a little bit, standing in our shoes for a minute, how our constituents want to know what's happening. And we repeatedly get asked for information, and we often don't have a whole lot of information to share. So if you sense a little bit of frustration from the council, it's because we're expressing what the people are expressing to us. And so when I stood at the polls on election day, for almost all of the 12 hours, I heard more about this than almost anything. So this was the issue people really want to know about. There's concern about it. There are people who said, I didn't even like the project, but now that there's a hole there, I want to see something happen. And so there's a public benefit to this project, many of us believe, and we want to make sure that that happens. So I just keep that in mind. And what I'd like to know is, can you really explain the role at this point of Don Sinix, given that you're here tonight and it seems as though we haven't heard from or seen Mr. Sinix in a while?
It's really no different than what you heard in January. Don is our partner. That hasn't changed. And Brookfield has essentially just taken a more active role. We're the managing member of the partnership. We always have been. We're the primary equity contributor to the partnership. And we've just taken a broader role in moving the project forward. But he's a valued partner, and nothing's changed on that front.
Okay. And then the last thing is you mentioned the term sheet, which I do have enough background to know that a term sheet is just really sort of an offer of a business deal, and it's the terms and the conditions of that financing. And did you say it was executed, or it's just been offered?
It is an executed term sheet, and I will tell you, term sheets don't come easily from banks. They typically go with a deposit that has to be made, a good faith deposit. So an executed term sheet is no small thing.
Oh, that's helpful.
It's a meaningful thing.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Pine. Councilor Paul.
Thank you. And thank you both very much for taking the time this evening to be with us. I imagine you probably have gathered by the number of us that have spoken this evening that this is a significant issue. And as a few have already said, we get a lot of questions from people, and it sometimes is difficult for us to give answers when we don't know the answers. I did want to remind you, because we did not see Brookfield during the early days of this project. We dealt really exclusively with Don Sinix, and so perhaps you're not as aware of what happened in the beginning and what many of us at this table did so that you could be here. And that is that many of the people that are sitting in front of you voted on the development agreement. The development agreement wasn't voted on by the administration. The development agreement was voted on by this body. And not only do we approve the development agreement, but a good number of the people that are sitting in front of you put themselves out there and worked very hard to secure the things that you needed in order for you to do this project. And of course we did it for reasons of, because we believed in the project, and we did it because we feel that it's the right thing for Burlington. We all had different reasons, but we were there. And so we're in this with you. It is a little disconcerting when there's silence. In our impression, regardless of the meetings that you have, our impression is that, unless you're here or unless you're communicating with us, we don't hear about that. And so that is disheartening to us, despite our enthusiasm for the project, which many of us feel. It's disheartening to us, and so it's disheartening to the community because we don't always have the answers that we would like to have. And I'm a little surprised when you first started and said that the two of you have been here many times. I don't know if you're living here, but have been here many times since January. And yet here it is almost the beginning of May, and we've never seen you. So, good, bad, or indifferent, we saw a fair amount of Don Sinix. We have not seen a fair amount of you, and we would like to see more of you. I would like to see more of you. I'll just speak for myself. The other thing also is that, while the way our government is set up, we have an administration that has many employees. We have a consultant who's working on this. It's not really the responsibility of another elected body to decide when this elected body gets to hear from you. And so I would ask that, that you be here much more often, even if you don't have a lot to update us on. I would like it to be a more regular and consistent exchange so that we see you. And when we see you, the community sees you. And I do agree with others who have spoken to the NPAs. They're another opportunity for you to engage with the community. And I also agree with you that while it is labor intensive to meet with all 12 of us, perhaps individually, I hope that you will do that, because we'd like to get to know you. You're our, we are to some degree your partner in this. That yes, this is a large degree of private initiative, but it is a public initiative in the center of our downtown, and everyone in this room cares a great deal about that project. So thank you very much. I don't really have a question. I just hope that you will heed what I'm saying.
I
Thank
do
you.
I do want to say I take that to heart. I think it's a very fair comment. Our focus has been, again, on nuts and bolts kinds of things, and we just didn't put enough focus on building that relationship, but we understand how important it is. I also want to say we don't take for granted what's come before. There was a huge, heavy lift that was accomplished by our partner and by this body, and it's no small thing that we sit right now in the position that we're in. So we don't take that for granted.
Thank you very much. I mean, we want to ensure your success, because your success is to a large degree our success as a community. So thank you very much. Yes. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Paul. And I would just like to add one. When we talk about communication between your representatives of Brookfield and us, the city, what is the communication between you and your partner, Don Sinex, in regard to, part of the frustration is that this misinformation came out that Don Sinex said in the press, more than one place, that the foundation was going to begin to be poured in May or June. I heard May and June, and now you're saying that's not accurate. Are you and Mr. Sinex on the same page in terms of communication regularly so that one message is coming out for the council and the city?
The answer is yes, we are in communication. We're partners. There's an ongoing dialogue on many levels. That doesn't mean that the way things get represented sometimes to the press is consistent, and we need to do a better job in making sure that it is.
And my last thing is just to reiterate, you are still 100% behind this project.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Any other questions from the council? We do have a lot of other stuff on the agenda. All right. I appreciate that. Thank you for being here. We will look for more often updates from you and look for the written update to the questions that Councilor Roof put forward. And again, we are eager partners with you, because we do know how important this project is and vital to the city of Burlington, and we want to work together with you to make sure this happens.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Item 5.04 is a presentation from Sarah Reeves, General Manager of the Chittenden Solid Waste District, as well as, no, just Sarah Reeves. Good evening, Ms. Reeves. Welcome.
Thank you very much, and thank you for your time. Burlington is my first stop on my annual budget tour, so thank you again. My name is Sarah Reeves. I'm the Executive Director for the Chittenden Solid Waste District. And the Chittenden Solid Waste District is a municipality that was created in 1987 by Act 78 to implement solid waste mandates legislated by the state of Vermont. We function much like a regional planning commission or a water district in that our charge is to design regional solutions to the solid waste challenges faced by our member towns. The district encompasses all of Chittenden County. We have 18 member towns, and we are the largest solid waste district in Vermont. We serve a population of approximately 156,000 people, over 6,000 businesses, and we are governed by a volunteer board of commissioners. Our mission is to reduce and manage the solid waste that is generated within Chittenden County in an environmentally sound, efficient, effective, and economical manner. We employ about 50 people in 5 main departments: administration, finance, compliance, outreach and communications, and facilities. And we either own, operate, or manage 5 different types of facilities: drop-off centers, the environmental depot, the Rover, a materials recovery facility, and an organics diversion facility. This year, the fiscal 20 budget is seeing increases in both revenues and expenses. We are proposing that the revenues will be $12,628,865. We're anticipating expenses in the amount of $11,450,520. We will net approximately $331,000, which will be then put to our solid waste management fee rate stabilization fund. The first thing that most of the communities want to know is, are you going to assess a per capita municipal fee? The answer is no. We have not done that in our history, and we are going to continue to not do that. And then the second thing that they want to know is, are you going to raise the solid waste management fee, which is essentially our tax on trash? And the answer again is no. We're going to maintain that fee at $27 per ton of trash disposed. Most of the trash from Chittenden County is disposed in Coventry, but some does go out of state, but not too much. Last calendar year, we embarked on a very wide-ranging and yet focused conversation about 3 of our main infrastructure pieces: the Green Mountain Compost, or what we are now calling our Organics Diversion Facility, our Materials Recovery Facility, or our MRF, and our drop-off centers. So a lot of the conversations that occurred in the calendar year have been carrying through into this budget. The first one, as I mentioned, is the Organics Diversion Facility. And we're changing the name of that facility. It has been long known as Green Mountain Compost, and really that is the brand that we sell our compost under. It doesn't really tell the story of what we do. So what we do is we manage organics, and we are shifting the paradigm there. Prior to my coming on board, the focus was on selling compost. Our focus is now going to be on managing organics. We have come to realize that being in a retail compost sales arena is not the right thing for us to do. But we do need to manage organics better. So that is where our focus is going to be. That is resulting in some significant changes to the budget of that facility. We will be seeing decreases in expenses, but also in revenues, at the same time trying to improve the processes. So that is a wildly moving target, but we hope that within a few months that we will have a solid path forward. We're looking at 2 current paths, and we're looking to get some clarity. We're going to be working with a consultant. We'll bring that decision to our Board of Commissioners, and by the fall, we'll have a good, solid direction. The other facility that we worked on last year and continue obviously to work on is the Materials Recovery Facility. I told you last year that the markets were bad, and they are still not great. So the big change this year is we are raising the tipping fee, or the fee for disposal, to $65 a ton. We're also raising the fee at the Organics Diversion Facility to $60 a ton. At the MRF, the pressures still are in the material sales. Of the materials that we sell, we receive approximately 47,000 tons of materials into that facility. What is marketable is about 36,000 tons. Of that, 80% are either paper or cardboard. And guess which markets fell flat on their face? There was paper, and now cardboard seems to be sliding. So we are continuing to experience, as is the rest of the world, issues with marketing that material. So there continues to be market volatility. I think I also mentioned to you last year that we are, even in that, seeing some opportunity in the challenges, in that we do need to recognize that our facility is almost 5 years old, and has seen much better days. It is firmly rooted in the 20th century, and we are needing to bring it to the 21st. And so we are actively looking at locations. We spent last year looking at different processes, and we'll be bringing more of that information to our board over this next coming fiscal year. And then we will be hopefully moving forward on building a new facility. Our facility was designed to accept half of what it does. So even though the tonnage isn't necessarily going up, the volume is increasing dramatically. So we are out of space. It's very, very difficult to function. That is not something we can pay for out of our bank account. So that will involve a bond. So you'll be hearing much more from me, to Councilor's comment on the last speaker, much more from me regarding the future of that facility and bonding as it's coming up. And then the last bit of infrastructure that we focused on last year were our drop-off centers. And that is going to be ongoing. I think that is going to be another 1 or 2 years of system strategy to really figure out where we want to be. We're realizing some growing pains with our drop-off centers. We did have to decommission the Heinsberg drop-off center temporarily while they built their new garage. So their garage is completed, and we have put money into the budget this year for a new drop-off center at Heinsberg. But we also recognize that there are other facilities that need some attention, so we're putting some money in there as well. I did mention that we had some fee increases that we're looking at, some modest fee increases at the drop-off center. The Burlington drop-off center fees will be increased by 2 cents per pound, going from 19 cents per pound to 21 cents per pound. We will also be implementing a new fee, and this one was one that we did not enter into lightly. There was a lot of conversation and debate back and forth among staff and with my board. We're implementing a new fee on blue bin recyclables, but only on folks who are only bringing us the recyclables and nothing else. The fees will increase for others, whether they're paying by a bag 25 cents, 50 cents, or by the 2 cents per pound. But if you're bringing us, a customer's bringing to our drop-off center trash and recycling, or trash and food scraps, or trash and recycling and food scraps, there is still that one fee. If you're bringing to us only recycling, right now you pay nothing. You're not paying your fair share. So we're going to be implementing a $2 per visit, not per ton or per bucket, but $2 per visit for customers who only bring us recycling. And that is to reflect and be more transparent about the cost of that particular function. Recycling has never been free, but we have wrapped those fees into the costs, bundled them together. Prior to about a year ago, we were not able to unbundle those fees. It was against the statute, so they changed that last year to allow that. So we're going to start to recover some of those fees from the folks who had been subsidized by our trash customers. Those are my very high-level overview, and I'm open to questions.
Thank you, Ms. Reeves, for that presentation. How many communities has the budget been in front of already?
You are the first.
We're the first. Okay. Councillor Busher has questions, and then Councillor Roof, and Councillor Busher, Councillor Busher, you're first.
Thank you. Just wanted to point you to another person who wanted to be
You
recognized.
pay attention to your speaking in front of the microphone.
I
I'll handle the rest.
will. Okay. Yes, sir, Mr. President. Okay. I wanted to know if the approval of the budget was unanimous.
I have to think back. I don't have my notes with me. I believe that it was, but I would have to double check the minutes. They have not been published yet.
Okay. That's key for me. The other thing is, I always ask for, this is not your problem, this is internal to the city, but I always ask what Burlington's member, how they voted. And that person has now no longer working for the city, but and that's unfortunate. But anyways, do you recall if they supported the budget?
They did.
They did. Thank you. So another question is our current contribution. I didn't see that. And what is our new FY20 contribution?
I'm confused by what you mean by current contribution.
As far as what we pay in to support this?
Nothing.
Nothing. Okay. All right. And so I have a couple of other comments. One has to do with, I am concerned about the no longer putting into bags Green Mountain compost. I think that, the community, you inherited it from the Intervale. You know the history just like most of us do. And I think that, part of what we think about in this community, in this region, is sustainability. And so now, every place that I go to sells Green Mountain compost in bags. And so that's one issue that I think is real. I understand you don't want to be in retail, but then maybe that wasn't a good decision initially for you to take it. And I'm not satisfied with the direction you're going in unless you're partnering with someone else. What are you going to do with the rest of the organics? What's happening here? I don't understand that, and I couldn't really pluck that out from your communication. I think that's really key. And then the last comment that I have to make is one thing that you pointed out to me is that although we have recycling and we have composting, you still continue to see an increase in the amount of trash that's disposed of, and you don't know why, and nor do I. One of the things that I think I wish that you would look at, that Chittenden Solid Waste would look at, is you eliminated the free stations. I don't know if you eliminated them everywhere, but I think you did. And I think that a number of items, I understand they were a pain to oversee and manage, but I do think that some things didn't go into the trash. Not a huge quantity, but some. And I think that that's one of the things that I'd like you to reconsider. Every time you increase a fee on a only thing, like if people only compost, then they pay a fee. If they only recycle, they pay a fee. Yet what we're trying to do is get people to separate and do all of these three: trash, recycle, compost. I think that some of your approaches, for me, seem to be disincentives. So those are my comments. Thank you so much for coming tonight and providing me with those answers. Thanks.
Certainly, and thank you for your comment. Is it all right if I? Okay,
Sure.
Thank you. So regarding the organics diversion facility, Green Mountain Compost, we absolutely are planning to continue to sell the material through local garden centers, but in bulk. So they will be available in the communities. Gardener Supply has been a long-term partner with us. We also want to get them into throughout the county into other local gardening centers. The issue was that in order to continue to try to recover some of these costs, we were having to sell the bags further and further and further afield. So we were selling into the North Shore of Boston. We were looking at selling into New York City. It just simply didn't make sense. We wanted to bring things back local. And to me, local is, when not at all possible, in Chittenden County. So we're focusing our efforts on matching the food scraps that are coming in to the amount of leaf and yard, matching the nitrogen and the carbon, so that we can continue to make a good quality compost, but in a volume that we can manage. And that has long been, since the start of that facility on Redmond Road, has been the issue, is that it was never designed to be able to expand. Again, it's a similar problem to the recycling facility. It was designed for half of the food scraps that we're taking in. This year, we will probably reach nearly 6,000 tons of food scraps at that facility. It was designed to manage no more than 3. So we have to find a way to reduce those costs and still be able to make these products. We're still looking to make 3 products. So we're not going to lose the Green Mountain Compost in Chittenden County. It will just be in a different form. And when talking to our garden center partners, they were actually kind of excited about it because they know that they will be able to have that one-on-one relationship with their either existing customers or new customers in a new way, and they may be able to offer them different services. So we will be getting this material into the soil in Chittenden County, and that is very important, and our board made a commitment to that. It was just, should our mission be to become a retail outlet? And we just determined that it was not. So I understand that there is a loss, feeling for many folks who are used to that product, but they will be able to find much of that in some of their local areas. And those lists of the garden center partners is going to be on our website if it's not already, but it will be there. But thank you, and I do appreciate the concern. You're not alone.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilor Busher. Okay, we need to tighten this up a little bit. Councilor Roof, and we've got other councilors in the queue after.
Okay, thank you, President Wright. I'll be as quick as I can be. Thank you for the memo and the presentation. Also, thank you for spending a little bit of time on the phone earlier today.
My pleasure.
And during that discussion, a few things helped me kind of better understand some important things. First, one you've already mentioned is that, well, at no cost to consumers, historically, recycling is not free, and that this shift, which I also read as concerning, is justified, or the argument is justified in the sense that you are making it more transparent about what those costs are, and I appreciate that. The second is a comment that will lead to a question. I learned that Burlington is the only member of the district that has or uses a scale when at the drop-off location, which, as you articulated during the phone call, incentivizes people to produce essentially less waste because they're paying for the amount that they're bringing as opposed to the visit outright. So my question is, what are the plans for the future to motivate or incentivize waste reduction throughout the district?
It's a great question, and you're right. Burlington is unique in that function, and ideally, all of our drop-off centers would have a scale. That is truly the best way for everyone who generates waste to know exactly the cost of what they're generating. And you know, our efforts in waste reduction as an industry, and it's not just CSWD or Vermont, have been lacking over the past 15 years. And I think because we focus so much on recycling, and our focus, I've asked my communications team and my education team to really home in on reduction, waste reduction, because that is that's the only item in our mission, is reducing the waste and then managing, but really reducing. So the ways that we're going to do that is we're going to ramp up and change our communication strategy. We're focusing on being more interactive with people, as far as informing about what, just snippets and what did you not know, tips and techniques on how to reduce the amount of waste that you're producing, whether it's food waste, reuse. We're looking to sponsor more fix-it cafes, repair cafes, getting more involved. We're already very involved at the school level. Most people know Recycle Rhonda, and getting more involved with community-based organizations. Our waste warriors are out there every day, talking with their neighborhoods, and so really focusing them on those efforts to talk more about and offer practical solutions to reduction, because that is truly the key.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Roof. Councilor Pine, then Mason, Jang, and Hanson. Councilor Pine.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to yield my time to Councilor Hanson, if I could, to speed this up.
Okay, Councilor Pine is out, and Councilor, no. I mean, all right, go ahead. Councilor Hanson, you're basically, go ahead.
Okay, can I go? Is it, all right,
Go
am I
ahead, you
going?
can take the floor.
So, thank you for coming, and thanks for speaking with me earlier today on this. I have some serious concern around it, and I think given the fact that we have a lot more time, we have, I think, 45 days from last week when this came out, I think it would be important to bring this to the Transportation Energy Utilities Committee to drill in a little deeper, and I think really aim at what you just highlighted, which is how do we reduce waste, because right now it's increasing, and I think that the changes in education and communication I definitely support, but I also do know that money talks and economics talks, and the communities that have been successful at reducing waste, both Vermont and elsewhere, have done it largely by going in the opposite direction of what we're talking about, which is by shifting the cost burden more so onto trash and less so onto composting and recycling. That's been the model that has been most successful, and so as we're seeing these increases, I'm concerned that we are simultaneously shifting it the other way, where we're keeping flat the cost for trash while increasing the cost for those two. So I think this is something that is really worthy of a deeper look and a better understanding of how we are going to reduce waste specifically, and what, why haven't we been able to, and looking at other models and trying to shape our actions in that direction. So therefore, I would move that we refer this to the Transportation Energies Utilities Committee to be able to dig more into that, as it is a very common, shared goal of you all and of our community.
Councilor Hanson has moved that this be sent to the TUC committee. Is there a second to that motion? Seconded by Councilor Freeman. Is there discussion on this? Councilor Mason.
I guess my only question is there a report back date, and is the expectation that the full council, if you maybe could put some finite dates on that, that would be helpful?
Sure, yeah. So we meet on the 7th, a week from tomorrow, and I want to hear the head of that committee, Councilor Tracy, respond as well, but I think it would be reasonable that we could bring something back for the next council meeting. But I would also want to get Councilor Tracy's input to don't want to speak for the whole committee, as well as Councilor Pauline.
Councilor Tracy, did you have comments to make on it?
Yeah, just to say that we're still developing the agenda. We were asked to have agenda items for the TUC meeting in by May 2nd, so we still have a couple days and are still actively soliciting agenda items, so we don't have a solid agenda as of yet, so we could address this at that
And this
meeting.
still leaves plenty of time for the timeline for you to.
June 8th is the 45 days, which is a Saturday, but
So the idea would be to come back to the next council meeting after May 7th. Councilor Tracy.
That would be my hope.
Thank you. Any other discussion, or are we prepared to vote on sending this to the TUC committee? Okay, all those in favor of the motion to send this to TUC, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes, and
please let me know if there's any way that I can be of assistance. I'm sure there's a lot of detail that you will need to have before your meeting, and I'm happy to either come and present in more detail or present you with something. But
Thank you very much. Yeah, we'll be in touch very shortly.
thank you very much, Ms. Reeves.
Thank you.
So, just point of order, there's a few of us in the queue.
Councilor Mason, what is your point of order?
Just before Ms. Reeves, I think she thinks she's done. I don't know if, I had a comment that whether it's directed to TUC or Ms. Reeves now, so I'm just with
Okay,
with your
proceed,
permission.
Councilor Mason.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. I just, to sort of echo, and I think I want to bring this to TUC's attention, Ward 5 may have a unique circumstance. I appreciate your understanding the logic behind why there's the proposed $2 fee on the recycling. In Ward 5, our recycling pickup is on Monday, which unfortunately puts us on 5 or 6 holidays over the course of a year where there is no pickup. So I and a number of other Ward 5 residents make the great Saturday morning trip. Again, I don't think a $2 fee will be an impediment, but I am concerned we are, those of us are paying already for recycling through our trash haul are now being asked to pay again a second time because we don't have recycling pickup on Monday. So I don't have a fix for that, and I know it's something I've spoken with Chapman regularly. Constituents are frustrated. I think that, because we have the Monday pickup, there's no other day, we sort of bear the brunt of that. It may push everyone to toters, maybe the unintended consequence. But again, I'm not sure that's something the board was aware of at the time, and I don't have a solution other than to say that may not work very well for Ward 5 residents. I can't speak for other wards, but.
and because the city picks up recycling, it really is a Chapin question, sorry.
Correct. So for what it's worth, that's
Okay,
a
good, it's good to know,
concern.
thank you.
I will recognize Councilor Jang, and then I do want to move forward since we have moved this to the TUC committee and they will be coming back, but Councilor Jang will recognize you.
Yes, thank you, President. And this is an opportunity since you're here, and I wanted to make one comment and also ask you one question. Okay. Thank you for recognizing me, President. So the comments that I wanted to make is maybe I am the only person here at this table who use your facility every single weekend. Every Saturday, I am there. But don't tell your staff who I am. Just let me be a regular person. So I think, their customer service is excellent. I want you to know that. They're excellent people. Sometimes my garbage is so light, the scale won't even pick it up, and they just say, go. You know what I mean? That's one. But I think it will be imperative for the facility to be upgraded a little bit. One, the road. The road, I don't know who does it belong to between Pine Street and inside the facility. It's so, I don't know. Something need to happen. And I don't know the permits that you have or the zoning. in having at least a hose there when people put their food scrap. Sometimes we want to clean up a little bit, you know, and I don't know if it's possible to have a water hose there so that we can clean up, you know, to look into it. And now my question is this. This is more of a county-wide resolution, and it will go to many municipalities. Let's say it comes back here, and then it fails, right? And it passes in the other communities. How would you move forward?
According to our charter, I need 10 communities to approve the budget. And then if 10 communities approve, it is approved. If any community declines approval, there's a process in our charter by which you then need to follow. And I'm happy to provide that information to the city so that you understand as well the next steps should you decide to disapprove the budget. So it's fairly involved, but it is doable.
Thank you for being here and for all you do.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Jang. And Ms. Reeves, thank you for wading through some lengthy, other lengthy items tonight. We appreciate it.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Item 5.05 is communication from David White, Interim Director, and Gillian Nanton, Assistant Director of CEDO, regarding the neighborhood project. Welcome.
Point of information.
Point of information, Councilor Roof.
President Wright, would you like the motion to begin this conversation, or
Sure.
recommend an action?
Would you like to make that motion,
I would be
Councilor Roof?
happy to make that motion, just so we can get it out of the way. I'll move to accept the neighborhood projects report and refer to the CD&R committee and the report's recommendations for review, and prioritize actions and develop a plan and timeline for taking these forward in collaboration with the administration.
Moved by Councilor Roof, seconded by Councilor Pine. Any discussion on the motion? We want to hear from them first, yes. Let's hear from you before we get into that.
Hey, thank you for having us tonight. As you mentioned, Jillian Naughton is here from the CEDO office, who's been the project manager for this project. Is a project that both the Community and Economic Development Office and the Planning Office have been working on for more than a year. Our consultant is here to walk through their recommendations, which is the report that will be referred to the CD&R to ultimately decide and prioritize what steps the city wants to take moving forward. So I'll turn it over to Jillian. And
thank you very much, David. Thank you very much, President Wright. You have a detailed memorandum before you, so I'm not going to walk through that in much detail, but just a couple of markers for context to this project. It is just one proposal. The neighborhood project is one proposal in the Housing Action Plan, which was unanimously passed by the City Council in October 2015, and which focuses on the availability and affordability of housing. And I think while Burlingtonians understood the need and the importance for increased housing to house students, they argued for a proactive strategy in addition to increasing our student housing. And that's how the neighborhood project was born. It was also part of the Eagles Landing Settlement Agreement. And I have to suggest and say that it is truly a partnership with UVM, with Champlain College, and with Preservation Burlington, along with the city, and some of my colleagues are here from UVM and Champlain College. And the Housing Action Plan suggested that a study be done looking at how one stabilizes those near campus areas, neighborhoods. And so it focuses on wards 1, 2, 6, and 8, and based on what the consultant was seeing, also looked at 5. Kevin, the consultant, will talk a lot about the processes, the inputs which were received, a number of methods were used. We had workshops, there was an open house, there's a survey, Kevin will talk about that. But at the end of the day, what we really wanted was potential tools and strategies which will create opportunities for diversity of housing choices, which will improve the quality of the housing stock, and initiatives which relate and impacted the quality of life in these neighborhoods. The final point I would like to make is you would see quite a number of the recommendations tie back to the recently updated Plan BTV, the comprehensive plan, Burlington's comprehensive plan, which was passed by the City Council last month. And I'm particularly thinking here of looking at ordinances which deal with accessory dwelling units, land use policy changes that would enable more student housing on the institution's campuses, and a citywide approach to or a plan for protecting historic properties. And so I'll stop there and turn over to Kevin, who will give you some highlights of the work that was conducted by his team.
Thank you all, and I appreciate being here. Burlington, over the course of the last year and a half, has kind of turned into a second home for me. I guess it's probably too late to get the camera to move to the other side so it can get a better profile. Hopefully this will work. You're going to have to forward the slide. It won't work. Thank you. Why don't we keep going? And then we're going to go past the next one. Jillian just talked about what the project goals were. There's the map of the areas that we looked at. And so I want to get into what we learned. Keep going. So the present state of student housing, sorry this is hard to read, but there's I'm going to highlight this for you all. And for those of you who've been involved in this project for a while, I know there are a number of new city council members. There's nothing in this that you had not seen before if you've been involved with this from the beginning. It's basically here just to highlight it for the remaining city council members. There's about 3,100 undergraduate students who live in the Burlington area. Not all of them live in Burlington. About 94% of them do, more or less. And what this bottom slide here talks about is kind of where the concentrations of them are that we were able to put together with the help of the university. Next slide. One thing I want to say is, and since we started this project, we've actually worked for a number of other university towns now, including Tuscaloosa, College Station, and Athens, Georgia. For those of you who don't know what that is, that's the University of Alabama, that's Texas A&M, and that is the University of Georgia. So there's institutions substantially larger than here. I would say, and I can say this in a very strong way, that the community and the partnership between both the city and the schools has some of the best practices that I've seen. And so I think you should be applauded for that. One of the things that's very interesting is there's two things going on. The first is that the incidence levels in the kind of the core student areas have been falling over time based upon the actual statistics. What has started to happen, however, is based upon some anecdotal evidence and then looking at some other data related to ordinances and other violations, it also does appear to be spreading as the students spread out more. Next. One of the issues that we have in the city, and this is kind of a really fundamental one, which is why you'll see line of sight to the recommendations that we made, is this top slide here is something that we call propensity to change. And what that basically identifies is people who are at the life stage where they're either likely to downsize or they're going to need a different kind of housing because they need more levels of care, if you will. And then the unfortunate problem is that they basically border right where kind of the core student area is. The other piece that we wanted to talk about is that's related to this is this issue around price appreciation and conversion. What we found in our study was that the housing in the student areas was not necessarily more expensive, but the transactions were taking place much faster, and the people could close much faster, and they were being priced differently than how you would price a single-family home. They were basically being priced upon what you could rent per bedroom. Next. The one thing that's also very important to know, and this is this is one of the key issues, which is kind of what we would call bedroom density, which is this dark area here, which is in the heart of the student area, is one of the most dense places in the city because of the number of students that live there based upon the number of bedrooms. The other dilemma with this is that it also happens to be in one of the key historic districts, and I'm not telling you anything you don't know, but this comes into play as we talk about what do you do about this. Next slide, please. The other thing that we found is, and this was pretty widespread, and it was not only between people in the neighborhoods, but it was also with developers, which is that there's a number of rules in the city and rules and requirements that are not clearly understood. And those range from everything from the difference between grandfathered in properties versus non-grandfathered properties versus the housing unit replacement requirement, which a number of people thought related specifically if you did something to a housing unit, you had to replace it one for one, and it only impacts if you take a housing unit and convert it to commercial. So there was a lot of confusion about what the rules actually really were. Next. So our basically two conclusions is one of them is something that you all know. You've lived here for a number of years. The first one is that there are student areas that have been student areas for a very, very long time, and the housing reflects that, and they are going to be very hard to convert back into owner-occupied or to duplexes or any kind of situation like that. The other piece is, and I think this is really important, is that you can control to some degree the spread of student housing across the city, but the reality is that you have to not only build more dedicated supply to student housing, but you have to have an ability to intervene in the market. And what I mean by that is, that's why we wanted to show the propensity of change slide. You have a number of these houses that are in this neighborhood where you have people who are at the point in their lives where they're either going to downsize or they need to move to some kind of assisted housing, and they happen to be right in the hot spot of where the students are. And if you don't want them to be converted over, somebody else has to step in and try to find a way to buy them. And what we're saying is that the focus should be not on, and this came up a number of times from the neighbors, which is the issue is one of balance, and balance was one of these words that was very hard to describe, but the easiest way to think about it is if there were 10 houses on the street and 7 of them are still family homes, the 3, generally speaking, there was not usually an issue. It's when it got to 60-40 or 50-50 or maybe even 40-60 that it started to become an issue. So it's really a question of those houses that are on the margin that can flip it, that can change the balance of the street. Next. So this is the point. It's going to take some time. It took a long time to get here. It is going to take some time. The other thing I would say, and I love you all, but there is no perfect solution. There is no perfect solution, and there is no solution that is going to make everybody happy. But what I will tell you is that if you don't do anything, that is also a decision as well, because the market will just continue to do what it has been doing. Next. So we ended up creating this framework, which basically has these 3 pillars. So one is continue the quality of life initiatives. And these are some things that can set the stage, and those are continue to build on and deepen the things that you're doing now. The other one is to work on containing and slowing down the conversion of single-family homes. And we think that has to take 2 places. One is some kind of ability to intervene in the market through purchasing the homes. And the second component of it is to potentially use the regulatory actions to make it more expensive to actually just convert them over. The third bucket is to convert selected student housing to non-student residential and try to maintain affordability. And this is going to be the hardest one to do. And the goal here is to not turn it over so that landlords that are going to rent to students can improve their properties. It's if I wanted to walk in and buy a house that had been cut up into 8 or 9 different bedrooms, that I want to convert it and turn it back into a duplex. Right now, some of the condition of some of these homes, that would be virtually impossible to do from an economic perspective. But for places where you could do that, it's going to require some capital that would be very hard to get through conventional financing. Next slide. So on the community feedback, and we had a lot. Next. So we took a number of guided tours with a number of residents. We went through every one of the neighborhoods. We even got hailed on in one of the tours. We had over 60 interviews. We were originally signed up to do 15, but I realized pretty early on that that wasn't going to work. So we were willing pretty much to talk to everybody one-on-one that was. We did one big open house in this room, and then 2 workshops that had 85 attendees, and then we did an online survey that, as you can see, with the 179 respondents. Next slide. And what you can see here is, and what this basically shows you is what people thought about at the big strategy level, the big framework concept. And what we asked them is, were you hot, warm, cool, or cold? And what hot meant is we really liked the idea. Cold meant this is a really bad idea. And I won't read these, but you can basically see that on the quality of life initiatives, they were more on the warm area. On the next slide, please. On the conversions, it was a little bit stronger. Some of them were it was hotter, but there was also some people that were cool. And we can tell you based upon the comments, it was the uncertainty around how would it work, which is one of the questions that I think you all will have to grapple with, is how would it actually work in practice. Next slide. And then the final one is just converting the selected properties. And again, on the workshop, it was very strong. On the survey, there was a lot of uncertainty. And I think one of the big differences there in the workshops, we actually, it was not done where I stand in front of a room, give a presentation, and then people ask questions. There was a series of boards. People walked around. There was a lot of one-on-one time with people so we could explain things. And I think the way the surveys are hard for some situations that are very complicated. Next slide. So then the specific action items, and I'm not going to go through these. One more. What we did is we identified a series of bullets. These are a series of bullets that are in there that have a series of action items. In the big report, every one of these bullet points is essentially its own page, and it has the rationale behind why we're doing it, what it might look like, and a hard, concrete example from some other place that has done it. So you guys can go through those reports. There's a couple that I want to pull out here. Just to give you examples of what we mean. So some of them are issues around building on the current renter education programs. Another one is enhancing livability standards, which is on the, which would be on the regulatory side, on the slow down the conversion. And what we mean by that is, and there's a concrete example in the report of things like a bedroom to bathroom ratio, meaning that if you want to put in a house that used to have 1 bathroom and it was a 3-bedroom and suddenly it's now 6 bedrooms, you got to have 2 bathrooms in its simplest form. And there's, again, examples of that. And then the last piece, which is, and this is the part that needs work, and I'll talk about that next, which is there needs to be a fund that would be a combination of public, private, and philanthropic money to potentially play a role here. But what I would say is that not only would it play a role in this, it has to play a role in the overall housing question in Burlington overall. It doesn't make sense to just simply focus it on these things, but you would want it to be able to do and solve some of the problems that are in these neighborhoods. Next. And this is what we want to be here. The financing programs are still conceptual. Again, in the report, there are examples of them in other places. And so that you can look them up, and it also includes the URL so you can link to it and find it. What I want to make clear, and I know that this is a very important thing in Burlington, not all of these tools will work in every neighborhood and every ward, and that is not the intent. The intent was to provide a toolkit for you all to pick and choose of how you want to solve the problem. Because like I said, if you don't do anything, it's just going to continue, and from what I can tell based upon my work here is this didn't happen in the last year, let me put it that way. This has been around for a while, and there's also a number of housing issues in the city, and I think there's an opportunity to combine some tools with some other things to address this issue. Next. And thanks, appreciate it.
All right, thank you. Questions from the City Council? Councilor Shannon.
Thank you. That was a really helpful presentation, and I appreciate all the work that you've done on this, as well as the neighbors that have participated for a very long time in the process. And I'm wondering, I remember when we passed the 4 unrelated adults ordinance, and I remember at that time seeing houses convert from essentially unsupervised boarding houses to single-family homes. And I also think that in more recent years, I've seen some of them convert back to the kind of boarding houses that they were. And I wondered what you saw on that issue with regards to the effectiveness of that ordinance, and if there is something that we should be doing to make it more effective, or if there are reasons you think that it's not going to be an effective solution.
So this has come up a lot. My answer to this is this. It's a difficult rule to enforce for a variety of reasons. And one of the unintended consequences of super strict enforcement is an easy way to think about it this way, which is if you have 8 kids living in one house and you really force it and you don't build supply someplace else, you now have to have 2 houses for those same 8 kids. So that's the trade-off.
Well, but actually, it's a little different than that because of the market issues that you have pointed out in your presentation. The 8 kids are paying a higher rent for that house and making it more appealing for landlords to buy these houses.
Correct.
And then to rent them to 8 kids, and the economics isn't there at 4. And so it starts to provide more incentive for single-family homes.
I think the economics, what basically happens, and I'm going through this right now with my own son at the university that he goes to as he moves off campus, but it's not here, just so everybody's clear. Otherwise this would
Thank
be a real,
goodness.
Otherwise this would be a real problem. But you put, basically the overall house, of the rent of the price of the house comes down. I think the issue here is more the question of being able to have something that can compete for that, if you do the regulatory piece as well, but then also have the ability to compete for that house, because they're still going to be able to get the rent. And that becomes the issue. One of them becomes an affordability issue for the students. The other side of it, the other issue becomes the rents just get a little bit higher. But the reality is that unless you have the ability to go in and actually try to compete for that house through some kind of mechanism, it's a very good likelihood that that house is going to convert, especially given what the demographics are. The problem is that it's very hard to beat the demographics of these neighborhoods.
I'm not sure I agree with that, but I'll leave it at that. And I would also ask, I don't know if you heard Sandy Wynn's comments at Public Forum. She had a number of suggestions for the report, and I know she's participated in a lot of the meetings. Were you able to hear
I did hear some of them,
those
yeah.
comments? And were those things that were, those specific things, had they been brought up in the meetings and decided, the group decided to go in a different direction, or are those new thoughts just based on?
Well, the pieces that I heard, and so please add, one is around the students. So their issue is, the question is the undergraduates versus the graduate students, particularly in the graduate medical education, residents, those things. So the number's a little bit bigger, but this is the real issue here is the undergraduate students. The other thing I heard was around and I believe I heard this, there was no room in here, so I was just sitting right outside. The other piece that I heard her talk about was the don't do rehab money for landlords who are just going to do it for the apartments, and we agree with that. And that, if you actually read the depth of the report, it says it's specifically for people who want to convert it back. And that would be one of the criteria. And the other ones I couldn't really hear.
Okay, thank you. Would this be an appropriate time to make an amendment to the motion that's on the floor?
Yes, it would.
I just ask that the comments that Sandy Wynn made, which I have here and can submit to the clerk treasurer's office, also be forwarded to the CDNR committee and that the CDNR committee review these and consider them for inclusion.
I think we could just have those forwarded.
Okay,
We'll
that's
just
fine.
have those forwarded to the committee.
I do want it on record that I'd like a
Yes.
report on these items. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Shannon. Other councilors, actually, excuse me, I have Councilor Busher and then Tracy already in the queue, and then Councilor Hanson.
We have a motion on the floor?
Yes, yes.
Yes, and now we're discussing that motion, and we have councilors in the queue. Councilor Busher.
So I wanted to thank you because I think what this report does, it compiles what we who live here know, but it puts it in a document and it associates maps with it. So it's real. So you really see where the neighborhoods that are on the brink of tipping too far in one direction and never coming back are. And it has the maps and then some tools, so thank you for that. In response to, if I may, in response to Councilor Shannon's question about why foreign relateds don't work, well, the ordinance itself has a loophole that was intentional, which has functional family. And people can qualify as a functional family. It was for extended families, for people that are new, that come from other countries, that have multi-generational members, or just members that live as a family. But you can qualify, and there are criteria. And so that sometimes is difficult to then really enforce the foreign related. The other thing, and David White is here that can speak to, foreign related is for a certain size property, but if it's a larger property, you can add additional people, 1 per 200 square feet or something like that. I don't have the ordinance in front of me. So I think there are many parts to the foreign unrelated ordinance that make it challenging for our community. But having said that, you know, I hope to be able to go to the CDNR meetings. You know, once again, this is on an agenda that's packed with really important items, and this one is. I'm glad that you spent the time in our community. I'm glad you walked, even though it was in Ward 1, not with me, but with other people. I think it was Sandy and maybe Karen that you got hailed on. But anyways, and soaked. But this is really good stuff. I think that for us, I want to start with the neighborhoods that we can save. And then I want to try to solve some of the neighborhoods that we feel have gone too far, but maybe there is a way with some of the options you presented to bring them back somewhat into balance where they're multi-generational and they work for everybody, not just for the student population. Thank you.
Totally agree.
Thank you, Councilor Busher. Councilor Tracy. And then I have Councilor Hanson and Paul. So if I missed anybody, get in the queue.
Thank you, President Wright, and thank you for your presentation. When we started this, I think to pick up sort of where Councilor Busher left off about trying to make the neighborhoods more accessible for everybody. I think that one of the intentions that I went into this with was really trying to see ways that we could create some economic access to the neighborhoods. So if we do end up converting or getting more different types of folks, so not just students in the neighborhoods, that those folks aren't just all wealthy folks who are able to invest significant amounts to do that, but to really have people across the socioeconomic spectrum be able to have access to these really great neighborhoods that are close to downtown. And so with that, one of the things that I wonder is if you looked at or have seen models or examples where cooperative or housing cooperatives have played a role in neighborhood stabilization, and if you think that that might be a successful model for not only bringing stabilization, but also helping to create some economic access, as cooperatives tend to be a little bit more economical, as well as ultimately sustainable in their approach. So I'm just wondering your thoughts on that.
We, in the recommendations that refer to both containing and slowing down as well as the conversion of some of the existing properties, we actually talk about that specifically, which is particularly if there's public money that gets involved, that there needs to be a long-term affordability strategy tied to that, of which cooperatives, a housing trust that you already have, there's a number of vehicles that you could do that through, and I think it has to be part of the discussion, absolutely.
Excellent, thank you. Well, I'd like to just suggest that the CDNR really give that a review when should they take this up, or when they take this up, I should say.
Thank you, Councilor Tracy. Councilor Hanson?
Yeah, I would just say thank you so much, and also really want to thank all the community members, some of them in this room who've worked just so hard on this for so long, and I'm really hopeful that we can get some concrete action out of this and turn this report into real meaningful action. And I think it was a good point that you raised about, you know, if we spend too long debating the perfect solution, we end up stalling action and stalling meaningful progress, which itself has an impact and does worsen the problem. I think that's a great point. I also appreciated the point about using this opportunity to combine some other tools to address housing issues and quality of life issues, and I want to make folks aware that I'll definitely be coming forward pretty soon with some proposals there of that I think will kind of couple with what's going on here in terms of that. And then just the final point that I just wanted to make is just make it clear, at least from my perspective, that the problem isn't students. I think the problem is market forces. The problem is certain landlords that don't manage properties well, that are neglectful both to their tenants and to the actual buildings. I think it's important that the conversation doesn't get framed as, you know, how can we stay away from students, or, you know, view them in a negative light. I think, you know, there's certainly issues to deal with certain students for sure, and other renters as well, but I think the focus is kind of the market forces and also the key power players that really shape the market. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilor Hanson. I have Councilor Paul, Jang, and Roof, and then I think we should be ready to send this to the CDNR committee. Councilor Paul.
Thank you, President Wright. I believe there was someone here from the university. I'm not sure if they still are here. Yeah, they're here, right there, hiding behind other people. I also wanted to thank the University Preservation Burlington Champlain College. I know that they've all been very involved in this, and for those of us who live in the areas that are most impacted, we have been certainly having a keen eye on the neighborhood project. And it's actually been going on for more than a year. It's probably closer to 2. You know, I think one of the first things that's most key in this report is the very first line in the report. We absolutely need to do, as you say, which is not just stand by. We need to create a program to stabilize neighborhoods that are heavily impacted by student renters. Councilor Hanson is absolutely right. One of the things that we love about being in Burlington is the fact that we have strong institutions and we have students. That's part of why we like living here. Most students are extremely responsible. Most landlords are extremely responsible. There are some that aren't, and it's challenging. It's challenging when you put working people, people with families, students in the same neighborhood. It's just a challenge because they're all working on different clocks, and they have different priorities, and so you know it is a challenge. Quality of life issues are a challenge, but they are not something that cannot be overcome. The other thing I wanted to mention is that, you know, there are two things as I've seen it as a city councilor. There are two challenges with quality of life issues. One is that there are areas where there are, as you said, the balance has shifted, and there are overwhelmingly students as opposed to students living side by side with full-time residents. That's one issue. The other issue are neighborhoods that are overwhelmingly surrounded by on-campus housing. That is not something to take lightly. Certainly, a lot of people love the Redstone campus. The Redstone campus is, as of this morning when I asked Joe Spidell, 2,800 students are living on that campus. I didn't ask about Champlain College. I don't know. I'm going to take a guess that there's about probably 900 students that are living at Champlain College at or adjacent or nearby the core campus. So we're talking a total number of students, not including people who live in neighborhoods. We're talking thousands of college students that live within blocks of each other. That can tip the scale for those neighborhoods who are also impacted. And the university, I think you had the goal of enhancing quality of life initiatives, which, of course I support, and I think it just requires vigilance and commitment. It doesn't necessarily require a lot of money, but it does require vigilance and commitment. But then there's a second goal of slowing down the conversion of single-family homes. And that also, I don't believe, is insurmountable. But I do think that the University of Vermont needs to house more of its students. And they need to do it in areas that are undeveloped or underdeveloped. And that's in the neighborhood project. I hope that that will be a priority for the city and be a priority for all of us to work to house, for UVM to house more of its students. You take hundreds of students, even a couple hundred of students out of the neighborhood, you are going to put pressure on landlords, and you're going to hold them more accountable. And it's a supply and demand issue. And I hope that that will be one of the one of the action items, and I hope that that will really be something that the city and the university will really work hard to do. There is space for it, and it can't be in the same spaces where it's been for many, many years. It has to be in other areas of the city. And I'm very appreciative of the fact that that goal is highlighted on page 28 of the report. I hope that that will be one of the goals that we pursue significantly. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Paul. Councillor Jang, and then Councillor Roof, and then we should be ready to send this to CDNR committee for further work.
Yep, I will be very short, but I will start by saying thank you, and I think the presentation was engaging.
Thanks.
Thank you, and thanks for laughing about that. And thank you too for the work you've been doing. So now my question is very specific. This is called neighborhood, and we know UVM is part of our neighborhood, Champlain is part of the neighborhood. And the approach is here. You mentioned many people, community work and all of that, but you did not mention any of them as to how did you work with them to create this document?
As you know, Burlington is a very high-touch community, and we got a lot of feedback and a lot of drafts from a number of people. I think in terms of the timeline, actually several of the ideas, in all honesty, actually came from some of the walks. From some of the walks that some of the members of the neighborhood had and said, it would be great if we had something that could go do this. And then after we mulled it through, it became a question of, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Now the question is, what does that actually look like in practice? So there's a lot of, we heard the comments, and like I said, I have 2 college-age boys, so I kind of get what everybody else is talking about as well. At the same time, what I can also say is while we listened intently and we took a lot of their advice and worded things in ways that put things on the agenda, the other thing I will say at the same time is there's a lot of, it's really time to focus on trying to solve it. It has been hanging around for a while, and it's kind of time. And the problem is that there was one comment about the market forces, but the other thing, which also kind of marches inextricably ahead, and if the economy slows, the market forces will change. The other thing is demographic change, and that's very real in these neighborhoods. And I think that's something that everybody has to think about in terms of how the speed at which you have to move.
So other than maybe Mr. Spiedel, Sorry, Spider. Looks like you did not talk to the leadership of UVM nor at Champlain. You did?
We did.
Okay. But now, have you looked into the housing agreement between the city and those institutions?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. That's all I needed to know.
Thank you, Councillor Jang. Councillor Roof, and then the mayor will have the last word.
Great. Thank you for the report and all your work. As someone who's been with this project since the beginning, it's exciting to see it here and off the CDNR, where I'll continue to be involved at that level. I just want to note two things, right? First, while this report focuses on near campus neighborhoods, it absolutely does have an impact on the entire city, and we do owe it to all of our constituents across the city to make sure that we move on this, because the out of whack housing market in my neck of the woods does have that ripple effect and is absolutely a contributor to citywide affordability issues. Secondly, without going too deep into it, I do just want to rise up a little bit more in this conversation, the role and conversation with the University of Vermont, because they have indicated that they are ready to come and have real conversations about what new development looks like on their campus. And I do think, just for transparency and being open, I do think the most logical place, which if they have a depth chart, which I'm sure they do, number one is going to be Trinity campus. And so while we're thinking about, as this moves forward, that's most likely where the conversation is going to start from my perspective and from my experience. And so I just wanted to elevate that conversation. So I look forward to the continued conversation, and thank you for the report.
Thank you, Councillor Roof. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, President Wright. The administration is very excited this report is finally complete and in the hands of the council. People, not that many people may remember the roots of this now, going back to when the Eagles Landing, as it was then called, now 194 St. Paul Street project was mediated. One of the outgrowths of that was this multi-party agreement between Champlain College, UVM, City of Burlington, Preservation Burlington to fund this study, and it is exciting that it's finally before us. And thank you, Kevin, for the hard work you've put in over a long time on this, and Jillian, thank you for what you've done to keep this on track and finally get it to this point. You know, as you all know, if you get me talking about housing, we can be here for a while. I'll try to be constrained and simply say this. This problem is a function of market forces, but what needs to be understood is we shape the market. The people at this table, our predecessors, the city, these local regulations very much define what the market is for housing here in Burlington, and this problem is in many ways a function of how severely we have restricted housing creation over a long period of time. Now, this is starting to change. You know, we commissioned a report recently that is promising. You know, it found that in the way at least this report defined housing creation, we saw the creation of 67 new homes in the 6 years leading up to 2012, when we started working together on the Housing Action Plan. In the 7 years since then, we've gone from 67 apartments being created in Burlington to nearly 600 being created over the last 7 years, and that is before some of the major results of Cambrian Rise and City Place Burlington and others hit, and so we could see that number go dramatically, and that also doesn't include 194 St. Paul Street. So the production numbers are starting to go up. But we have a long way to go. Our work is not done. That is why we are, as I mentioned, in the State of the City, going to have a housing summit, and the date for that, we will be promoting details on that event, and that date will be June 11th, and we'll have more details of it coming out this week, and some of the strategies that are in this report will very much be part of that discussion at the summit. Thank you, President Wright.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And thank you for that presentation. And we will now, we have a motion on the floor to accept the neighborhood project report and refer this to CDNR. All those in favor of that motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you very much. We now have item 5.06, which is a public hearing regarding the 2019 Community Development Block Grant and home proposed allocations / proposed 2019.
Many hats tonight. So tonight, we provide you with, I believe this is a public hearing?
Yes.
Relative to the action plan for our use of federal community development block grant and home funds. And Val Russell and Todd Rawlings are here from the Community Economic Development Office to explain a little bit more about what this is about, and I'll let them speak.
I'm Todd Rawlings. I'm the Acting Assistant Director for Community Housing and Opportunity Program. And I'm actually going to, Val Russell, who is currently the Acting Housing Program Manager, has done the vast majority of the legwork on this report and plan, and I'd like to turn it over to her.
Hello, I'm Val Russell. So we're here tonight for a public hearing, like David said, on the draft 2019 action plan for housing and community development. Comments received on the action plan will be incorporated into the final action plan before submission, and CEDO is also accepting additional public comments through May 10th. The action plan is required each year by the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development in order to receive over $1.2 million in HUD funding. The action plan combines the funding recommendations of the CDBG Advisory Board with the goals and objectives of the city's 5-year consolidated plan, and shows how the CDBG and home funding recommendations correspond with identified needs and action strategies. A draft 2019 action plan has been presented to CDNR. They have accepted the draft, and it is our understanding that one or more CDNR members will sponsor a resolution to approve it, and submit a final action plan at your May 13th meeting. So yeah, right now we're here to receive comments.
All right. So we now need to open the public hearing and close the public hearing, and you're also looking for comments from the council? Is that what?
Yes.
Should we do that before opening the public hearing?
I'd suggest the public hearing, and then if the council have
Okay.
comments you'd like to offer as well.
All right, so let's open the public hearing. Is there any member of the public that would like to speak on this? Anyone in the public? Going once, going twice. We will close the public hearing. And any questions or comments from the council? Councilor Pine.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll be very quick. The way that Burlington allocates the community development block grant funds is something that began when Bernie Sanders was our mayor, and it is a tradition that is not just something that we feel good about, but the rest of the country looks at what we do as a method of involving the community in making these decisions and in prioritizing how to spend scarce dollars, and says that's a great model. So I just want to highlight that and say you might not agree with everything they do, the advisory board, but in the end I think the process is inclusive and it brings people in to understand a piece of Burlington that they might not otherwise understand, and in doing that I think they make a great they make hard choices, but they make it's a great process. And I think I want to thank the citizens for doing it, and I think CEDO staff deserve to be recognized for overseeing that process. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilor Pine. Anything else from the council? Hearing none. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 5.07, this is what you've all been waiting for. This is it. Bee City, USA. Councilor Busher.
Thank you. So I'd like to move to waive the reading and adopt the resolution, and after a second, I'd like the floor back for just a minute.
Seconded by Councilor Hanson. Councilor Busher.
Thank you. Little did I know when I made the comment about pollinators in Plan BTV that actually, unbeknownst to me, going on in Parks and Rec was a process that had begun to make us a Bee City affiliate. So I didn't know that when I made this comment earlier. But this is really an important step if indeed we adopt this resolution, we would join 81 other Bee City affiliates. And if you look at the communication that was carefully drafted by Parks and Rec, by Cindy White and Dan Cahill, and all other people also that collaborated, what would happen is there would be a web page, and people could look on the web page to find recommended native plant species, and those would include wildflowers and grasses and vines and shrubs and trees, and also a list of local suppliers where you could obtain those. Also important would be a whole educational process regarding pest management and a goal of reducing the use of pesticides. Not only reduce the use of pesticides, but also, if indeed you use them, to use a pesticide the least toxic, and also an education about when to apply pesticides so that you'd have the least impact on pollinators. I think all of these are really important steps. You know, I did speak about the fact that, and it's been in the paper and in the news over and over again, that the bee population, the honeybee population is dwindling, and really without bees to pollinate, there goes our food supply. So although some may smile at this, this is really serious business, and it has to do with the fact that all of this is about climate change, and we are living it now. The other thing that will happen, and then I'll just make two other comments, the other thing that's going to happen is that we will monitor on an annual basis the number of pollinator habitats that we've either created or enhanced. And I think that's important also. We'll track our progress, we'll see if we're making advances. And I do see the mayor over there. You don't have to come towards the mic, but I certainly hope that City Hall Park will have pollinator-friendly plantings, not only in flowers, but plants and trees and shrubs. I'll be looking for those. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Busher. There was a rumor that you would be dressed up as a bee coming up soon. Is that true? That is a rumor.
No comment.
So there's obviously some truth to that rumor. Anyone else want to comment on this? Mr. Mayor, do you have anything you wanted to add? No, you don't. Councilor Hanson.
I would just say briefly, this is critical, especially as the impacts of climate change become more severe, that we're really looking out for pollinators, which are so critical to the food chain. And also just wanted to acknowledge, past work that's been done by former councilors Colburn and Dean and Busher on this issue as well. But I'm excited to move this forward.
Thank you, Councilor Hanson. Councilor Pine.
As the spouse of a beekeeper, I would just add there are plants which get the insecticide is literally applied to the germination of the seeds in stores, and then you go to places, I won't name any, but the big stores, they sell plants that literally have insecticides in their seeds. So when you do that, those are really harmful to bee populations, and a lot of people don't know that when they buy these incredibly robust-looking plants in some big stores that they take home and they bring the insecticide with them, and those are actually part of the problem that's threatening the bees everywhere. So just wanted to point that out, and hopefully that will be added too. So it's not just you applying insecticide, it's actually where you get your plants and what plants.
Thank you, Councilor Pine. Councilor Freeman.
Yeah, I just want to say I'm very excited about this action, and I wasn't involved in bringing this forward, but I'm just really excited that it's happening. There have been constituents of mine that have reached out to me about creating a better environment for pollinators and for insects overall. I don't know how many folks know this, but I believe the population of insects is diminishing at like 2.5% globally every year. It's an indicator of a 6th major extinction. So I'm very excited about this. I think it's something that we can kind of take lightly in this moment, but it's actually so essential to our ability to live sustainably and really sort of regenerate, for generations to come. So this is really exciting, and thank you for everyone who's worked on this. It's exciting.
Anyone else? All right. All those in favor of passing this resolution, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you very much. Congratulations to the sponsors of this. I think you created a real buzz around this issue. I know it's important. But we can still have a sense of humor, though. Okay. Item number 5. I'm losing track here. 5.08 is, gotta turn the page. A resolution update regarding the structure of Public Works water resources. Chamber Spencer and Megan Moir. So we are not going to need to go through the entire presentation. Obviously, we had that last meeting. So if you can just update us on what changes were made.
Thank you very much. Director Chapin Spencer here with Assistant Director Megan Moyer.
And please use the microphone. Have it close to you.
Yes, indeed. Thank you. We've appreciated the April 8th council work session and the April 15th council meeting where we had a chance to detail much of this proposal for the reorganization of the Water Division of Public Works. Thanks to all of your good comments, Megan has worked tirelessly to incorporate them into a memo that's in your packet and revisions to the resolution in front of you. Megan will detail a few of those edits.
Yes, thanks again, and good evening, councilors. So we understood that in order to balance your clear commitment to clean water with your very understandable growing concern regarding rate affordability, you needed more clarity and some firm timelines around what our currently planned work is regarding reducing the impact of rate increases on income-constrained, low-volume users. And so to that point, after speaking with a number of the councilors, we've updated the resolution to include more detail and specifics. Specifically, starting in line 42, we did find the resolution from September 24th that was part of the issuance of the revenue bonds where this issue was first mentioned. Then starting in line 47, we detail that during the FY20 fiscal year, we're going to be looking at 3 different packages with regard to the water resources rates. We're going to be looking at alternative revenue sources, so figuring out if there's other things that we could be charging for that wouldn't necessarily impact the residential user. Looking at alternative rate structures, including progressively priced tiers to protect access to essential water, so that initial amount of water that everybody should have access to without necessarily having to make tough choices about not eating or buying medicine. And then the third piece is looking at a potential affordability frameworks, and that kind of runs the gamut from discounts for certain qualifying ratepayers, potentially water conservation programs. If people are using less water, then they won't have as high a bill. And also looking at we've talked with a number of you about the need for potential grants and loans for upgrading service lines. We also commit to a robust stakeholder process, so an initial stakeholder process where we're talking with people about what their concerns are and what their ideas are, and then coming back to people at the end of that process or towards the end of that process to share with them a report on the proposed solutions. So those are all sort of the background, and then we resolve, or you all resolve you request that we specifically provide the City Council with the results of these evaluations as expeditiously as possible. So it's in our best interest to get this to you as soon as possible. It does take time, it is a lot of data, and there's a lot of analysis in figuring out who's going to be paying what. But we would be bringing this to you no later than March 15th of 2020 for consideration well in advance of FY21 budget conversations. So you would have at least 2 months before we really get into the meat of the budget presentations. And that was the earliest that we could get it to you firm.
Okay. Open it up to the council. Questions from the City Council?
I will. Okay.
Councilor Busher.
So I will be supporting this resolution. I did supply a communication which talked more generically about concerns I have. with the process. And so I won't, and I made a lot of those comments at the last meeting, so I'm not going to repeat those. And I know there's a sigh of relief from everyone, so. But I do want to thank the department. I was one of the counselors who took you up on the ability to meet with you and talk through all of this, and looked for some expanded language that would better detail what you would be looking at when you looked at a new rate structure, and I really appreciate that new language in there. One of the things that, and I know you've, the timeline, you said you'd do it as soon as you could. I have some concern about waiting until March 15th, and I just want to be clear. The council before you is made up of 12 members. 4 of them got elected last time. They're the district councilors. 8 are up for re-election in March. Now, that doesn't mean that you won't have some of the same faces around the table, but there's always a chance that you may not. And so I would like to think that this council who has been immersed in this and trying to work with you on this would have a chance to look at the options and provide some additional insight. So I would like to propose an amendment to this, saying that rather than on line 80, to change March 15th, 2020 to January 31st, 2020. And I so move.
Councilor Busher has moved, what was the line again? Line 8?
It's
Line 80?
line 80, yes.
Councilor Busher has proposed an amendment on line 80 to change the March date to January 31st. Is there a second to that amendment? Seconded by Councilor Freeman. Discussion on the amendment? Councilor Shannon.
Thank you. I'm all for doing it sooner rather than later, but I know that there are constraints on the staff to delivering that, so I'd like to hear what their thoughts are on that.
Can it be done by that date?
We can certainly start the engagement. We talked about a 2-step engagement process. Our intent here is to move as quickly as possible. We do not, at this point, feel comfortable that we could guarantee hitting that January 31st date, given the leaves of absence we're facing, given the procurement that still is underway but has not been completed, and some of the robust engagement that you all want, that we want to work through the community. We do feel like we need that time through March.
Thank you. Okay. Mr. Mayor?
So I really strongly object to what Councilor Busher is raising here. I think it's not fair to the team here. They have engaged for the last 2 weeks on this issue and come to, there's been a substantial discussion around this, and it's been asserted again and again that this is the best schedule that they can commit to making it on. The whole premise of the Councilor Busher's remark, I got to say I disagree with. It is going to be the next council that is going to be the ones who will be making the detailed decisions about what kind of new rate structure gets approved for FY21, and there will be ample time for that next council to engage this on the timeline this is committed to. You know, you have a small department that is struggling mightily to uphold its responsibilities here and is doing great work, and this is unfair micromanaging. I hope the council won't go along with it, and we'll stick to the resolution that was agreed to and discussed at length coming until tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councilor Jang?
Yeah, I think the mayor has a very good point, especially Councilor Busher's amendment. The reasoning behind it is just because of the council composition will change. I think if it was something more with substance, we could work around it. But at the same time, the mayor's point to the team, and also let's remember, we've been moving this until today. To me, we were just coming and supporting it, and I think we all should be happy that we at least have March 15 in there. I mean, reason why I won't vote for it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Jang. Anyone else on the amendment?
May I speak again?
Councilor Busher.
Yes. So I appreciate the mayor's comments, and I think that there are several things. I stand behind what I said, but I do think that March 15th is after town meeting day. Okay, I didn't expand, but I can. The other thing is that that's pretty late for a budget to be formed, to be adopted for FY '21, because normally we have got things rolling. So I believe that, although the city council doesn't get involved, the mayor and his administration get involved a lot earlier in the budget process. So I'm not naive in this, and so I do take issue with the fact that there is a suggestion that it's not self-serving. It is somewhat, because I do feel that this council has been involved and would like has asked for this rate, this tiered rate proposal. So I don't feel like that there's any flaw in that thinking, but I also feel like it should be, I would like to have it ready by town meeting, and I also think that it would be more timely to have it ready for consideration for the budget process. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Busher. Councilor Freeman.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, I just want to say I do support an earlier January 31st deadline, but it's not to put undue burden on the department, and by any means. It's just for me really trying to weigh this aspect of the impact that changing rates is going to have on low-income and working people, and it's really hard to even quantify what that means for one more or however many more people to be impacted by. I don't even really know how to articulate it, but yeah, and I think Councilor Pine at our last meeting spoke about this, about folks who are already just eating. I think the example you used was baked potatoes for a week, and I think that's why I'm just really pushing for, as much as I don't want to, I want to respect the department and the work that y'all are doing, and not put undue burden on our city employees. It's just, I don't know. That's my rationale, at least.
Thank you, Councilor Freeman. Councilor Hanson.
So my question around this, and this is to anyone who might have the answer, but if we did move it up, I think I agree with what Councilor Freeman has said, and I think anything we can do to get this relief in place sooner is beneficial. If we were to move it up, would that allow us to change the rates sooner, or would we still need to wait until the changeover of the fiscal year? Because we've had a lot of conversations about this, and I'm not 100% clear on that, but could these changes be implemented sooner, or does it require the change in fiscal year? I don't know if anyone knows.
It does not require. I mean, there's nothing structurally. You guys could change the rates today if you wanted.
Megan, could you turn that microphone to? It's pointed away from you. Thank you.
Yep. I think traditionally we have changed them at the fiscal year, and I guess I don't know how to convey to you all the sort of, I want to do this right, I want to do it comprehensively, I want to flip over every stone, because we do not, in my professional opinion, want to be changing things every fiscal year for a number of fiscal years. Customers are already confused about how water rates work, and so whenever we implement a stormwater utility or change rates, we get a slew of questions, and we're going to be fundamentally changing how we charge for water with this potentially progressive rate structure. And so I guess I want to balance the need to bring relief sooner with, bringing a well-crafted plan. We don't have our consultant on board yet. Once we have them on board, we'll be examining how quickly we can move. But I'm not going to go fast at the expense of doing it well, because I think Burlingtonians deserve that, and I think you all deserve that. I certainly, if we can, I agree, getting it sooner rather than later and getting it before town meeting day is to my benefit as well. Changing a council is hard for departments to manage as well, because you have to bring people up to speed. So we will be working towards that. I can't professionally promise that I'm going to be able to deliver on a good product for you all by the end of January. I won't promise my team to doing that. There's too much else going on that I can't control. If nothing else unplanned happens for the next 8 months, then maybe I will be here on December 31st, but that is not the world that I live in.
So you're making clear that you cannot make that promise, but that you will strive to do that date if possible.
Yes, I think it's to all of our advantages to figure out where we're going as quickly as possible, but I can't make the commitment professionally that, I mean, even the March 15th is potentially sooner than we would have been able to bring it. And so I was comfortable committing to that as sort of my...
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Shannon, then Councillor Paul.
I just want to say that this seems really not the way we do business here. We have always, when we want to change a date, we work with city staff to change dates, to come up with realistic dates, not kind of artificially imposing a date on the council floor that the staff is telling us they can't meet. I honestly can't think, and I have been here a long time, as has been pointed out sometimes, I can't think of a case where staff is telling us, no, we can't meet that date, and we do it anyway. It's really disrespectful. So I hope the council will not proceed down this road. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Shannon, Councillor Paul, and Councillor Pine. And
I'll pass so we can get on.
Councillor Paul passes. Councillor Pine, and then I'm hoping that we're ready to vote.
Yeah, I would just say that the spirit of what Councillor Busher has proposed, while I support it, I feel that we've tried hard we've worked well with staff on this issue, and I feel like we've, in good faith, worked towards something over the last couple of weeks. We had a postponement, which I know, from a staff perspective, never is ideal, but again, we serve the public and we're accountable to the citizens. So, but I do feel that you know our intention, you know we'd like to see this as soon as possible. I trust that you will push for the soonest you can possibly deliver something, and I hopefully that March 15th is actually, you know, the furthest out it would go, and it will happen sooner. But I'm not going to be supporting this because of that.
Thank you, Councillor Pine. I think we're ready to vote. All those in favor of the amendment to change the date, please say aye.
None of us.
I'm sorry. All those in favor of the amendment, please raise your hand. And those opposed, that fails by a vote of 11-3. And now we're back to the actual resolution, and I think we've had some significant discussion, so hopefully we're ready to vote on this now. Unless anybody else needs to speak, all those in favor of the resolution now, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes unanimously. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Item 5.09 is a resolution increasing access to publicly available bathroom facilities. Councillor Roof.
Thank you, President Wright. I move that we waive the reading, adopt the resolution, and after a second, ask for the floor back for some brief comments.
Councillor Roof moves it. It's seconded by Councillor Pine. Councillor Roof.
This resolution is a continuation of a process looking into where and when we as a city are providing publicly accessible restroom facilities throughout our community. I want to thank Councillor Pine and Jang as members of the Public Safety Committee in supporting this coming forward. The council may recall a report that aimed to map out, map out where our restroom infrastructure, where they are, and make recommendations for various types of facilities and potential locations. This is not a contained issue as it relates to conversations surrounding City Place, Memorial, and city parks, including City Hall Park most recently. In short, the resolution calls on the administration to do a few things. First, to identify locations for adding additional publicly available restroom facilities, to open existing bathrooms controlled by the city, especially those in our parks, and to report back in June on what short and long-term solutions are available to us. I'll close by noting that this is not an effort to do piecemeal budgeting. This is instead a result of a multi-step process that involved both city departments and community partners. And the report back date for June is intentional so we can match up this exploratory process with the city's forthcoming annual budget process. Thank you.
Okay, we'll go back.
No one's interested in
So good.
I feel like I flushed that out pretty well. And there's not going to be a big debate here because people are leaving.
So I made an error, Councilor Roof, so I'm actually going to suspend this for just a moment. Councilor Pine, just one second. Okay, so my mistake, I thought that we had the motion on the table for the last item. We had the amendment on the table, but I thought someone had actually moved it, and apparently it had not been moved. So we need to go back and re-vote on the last one, and I'm going to recognize Councilor Paulino.
Thank you, President Wright. I move item 5.08 and waive the reading to adopt the resolution to update the staffing to the structure of the Public Works Water Resources Division.
Seconded by Councilor Paul. I hope there's no discussion. Okay, we'll try that again. My mistake. I apologize for screwing that up. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And that now has passed. Thank you. And now we're back on Councilor Roof.
Do the same speech again.
Don't give the same speech again.
Was it right? I moved that we.
Okay, you all set?
It's been moved.
Seconded.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion on this item? Okay, we're ready for the vote. All those in favor of this resolution, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes unanimously. Thank you, Councilor Roof. Item 5.10 is a special event outdoor entertainment permit application. This was consent agenda item 4.05. It was removed by Councilor Busher, I believe. And so I'll recognize Councilor Roof to move this.
Laptop just broke. Can I use your laptop? Sorry about that. I will move 5.10, approval of a special event outdoor entertainment permit application for every Saturday, May 12, 2019 to October 12, 2019 for BCA, 8 a.m. to 3 p.m., lower block of Church Street, BCA, Summer Artist Market.
Thank you, Councilor Roof. Second by Councilor Tracy. Discussion, Councilor Busher.
Thank you, President Wright. The only reason I removed it was that I had asked Councilor Roof about the conflict with the Jazz Festival because of that 1 week when they have their tents up in Lower Church Street, and so that's why I removed it. But he did get a communication from Doreen Kraft, so I don't know whether he wants to just speak briefly to that, and that's the end of it.
Yep, I'll read directly from a communication from Doreen Kraft, who wasn't able to be here, but I did ask her to provide a comment. In short, it reads, the BCA team and Jazz are working very collaboratively on how we make Jazz and the artist market successful this year. Chelsea, the manager of Jazz, is excited about having the market with Jazz, alongside Jazz, and we too, as are we, rather. There is no conflict, only goodwill.
All right, thank you, Councilor Roof. All set, Councilor Busher? All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes unanimously. Thank you very much. We're moving on to item number 6, which is committee reports. Any committee chair that would like to report on committee activity? Councilor Tracy.
So as we talked about with the CSWD item, the Transportation Energy Utilities Committee will be meeting on May 7th at 5:30 down at DPW. In addition to the CSWD item, I have also asked that we discuss the Green Mountain Transit schedules and the College Street shuttle issue that we heard about today, wanting to get more information on how that plan is proceeding, as well as issues of fare charging on the College Street route. And then if other councilors also wanting to see the committee engage in a conversation about the work that we'd like to do. So if councilors on that committee have that work, please let us know what you're interested in either putting on the agenda or think about what you might want to address in other agendas. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Tracy. Councilor Busher.
So, yes, as acting chair of ordinance for one item only, we will be meeting on May 7th, 2019 at 5:30, location to be confirmed, to deal with ZA 19-07, which is commercial uses ELM.
Thank you, Councilor Busher. Other committee chairs? Councilor Shannon, thank you.
Thank you. The PAC committee will be meeting on May 8th at 5:30, location to be determined. And it'll be our first organizational meeting, some review of the items that are in committee now and planning for what the committee wants to take up for the year.
Thank you, Councilor Shannon. Other committee chairs? Hearing none, we'll conclude item number 6. Move to item 7, which is city councilors on general city affairs.
President Wright?
And we need a motion. It's a 10:30 magic time. And so, Councilor Busher, would you like to make a motion?
I'll move to complete the agenda, to, what is it, to
Suspend our rules.
suspend the rules, excuse me, and complete our agenda.
Councilor Busher has moved that we suspend our rules and complete the agenda. This requires a 2/3 vote in favor. All those in favor of suspending our agenda, suspending our rules and completing the agenda. I'm having as much trouble as you are with that.
Yes.
Please say aye.
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 Any opposed? That passes, and we will
Was
continue.
it seconded? I'll second if it wasn't.
Okay.
Did I miss that?
Just-
Councilor Shit. Miss it all, guys. Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We have suspended the rules, and we are on to item number 7, general city affairs. Councilor Shannon.
Thank you. Councilor Pine and I had the pleasure of meeting with a delegation of mayors and city councilors from Jordan. And it was a very interesting conversation. And one of the things that came up was they have a lot of refugees from Syria in Jordan. And as we discussed further, I asked them how many refugees they had, and they said it's 110% of the population. And at first we thought that they meant it was like a 10% increase in their population. But in fact, what he means is there are more refugees in their community than there are citizens. And I asked them, where do they all live? Do they live on the street? How do you accommodate that many people, as our country is so worried about the refugees that we have taken in, and concerns that refugees are going to be bused to Burlington, which we have said we welcome them, I think. And they said, well, we consider them our Arab brothers and sisters, and we take them into our homes. And I thought that was just, it was just a really profound moment for me, and made me reflect on why we have these, why we have sister city relationships, and the Council on World Affairs, and having these kind of exchanges really are meaningful to us. And there was a woman also, there were translators involved in our discussions, and one of the women in the group asked if, as a woman, sometimes do I feel that sometimes I'm not listened to because I'm a woman? And the translator translated the question, and then there was a lot of conversation in a language that I don't understand. And then the translator translated what he was saying to her, which was that she was talking too much, and that she shouldn't ask so many questions. I believe it was her first question, and there was another man who had been talking quite a lot. But it's also interesting that they have quotas for women on their council, but that it's becoming more successful, so that women are starting to win seats beyond the quotas that are required for women. So they do feel like they are making some progress on that. But I would encourage counselors to take advantage of these opportunities that we have to meet with foreign government officials, because it's pretty amazing. We learn a lot. Also, I want to, again, just remind people about the 2030 district meeting, which is about making our buildings more efficient and addressing climate change in that way, in ways that are economically effective and market-driven even, but can make a real difference. And the meeting is at 5:30 on Monday on Wednesday, May 1st, this Wednesday. And I'm sorry, I need to look up Main Street Landing is where it is. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilor Shannon. Councilor Busher?
Yes, I guess I need the mayor to educate me on a couple of things. One is the College Street shuttle. This seemed to catch me off guard, that I thought we partnered with UVM to help pay for that free shuttle. So I was confused by this conversation, and maybe I need someone to point me in the direction to get educated about what's going on, because this was a big surprise to me. The second thing is it Mr. Glassberg is the person that interfaces with the town center, and if he's overseeing that, maybe he should be reporting to us on a regular basis. That's a question I once again have for the administration. I'm not sure that's the right thing to do, but it seemed like they were meeting with him, and maybe we should get information from him also. So those are two questions for the mayor to ponder or point me in some direction to get answers to. The last thing is, I was in Boston last week, and they were having a pilot of e-scooters, and the mayor of Boston came on TV and said, no way, no how, not yet, because of safety issues with e-scooters. So I just wanted to report that to everybody here. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Busher. And the mayor can either respond in his final comments, or he can talk to you
Wait, I didn't mean
privately.
to
Yes.
have him respond
Yeah,
now.
I know you don't. Any other councilor on general city affairs? Councilor Freeman.
I just wanted to announce quickly that we've organized for the Ward 2 and 3 NPA on May 9th, Thursday, May 9th, to have a section regarding public safety, and have invited the chief of police and our liaison from the Community Justice Center. There were folks that had questions about the shootings that had occurred in the neighborhood, and just wanted to make sure that the public knew that we would be having that forum, and would be a good place to come and be part of that discussion and address concerns.
Thank you, Councilor Freeman. Any other city councilor? Hearing none, we will conclude that item. And item 8, I have no announcement to make at this time, so I'm going to move ahead to Mr. Mayor, General Affairs. Take us home, Mr. Mayor.
Great, thank you, President Wright. So I wanted to note a couple milestones that I think the council and the public should be aware of, and we did put out a press release on this, but I'd encourage people who haven't checked it out to go to the mayor's page and see it. Is the arborist has committed, the city's arborist has committed to a plan where this year 360 new street trees will be planted, which is really an impressive total when you consider that at least we haven't gone back decades and decades, but you know, a big year a few years ago was considered to be about 140, 150 trees in a year. So this is a big jump from that. I think it's really interesting and exciting the way in which Vijay Komai, the new arborist, is bringing new methods and new technologies to bear to make this possible. One of the methods that the public, I think, should be aware of is using volunteers to do the tree planting. We had the first of these out in a New North End community this past weekend. It was a community we started with because there's a real need to increase the number of street trees being planted, because we are expecting the emerald ash borer to be hitting Burlington in the coming years, and that's going to have likely a devastating impact on our ash tree population. This neighborhood is, at least in the 5 blocks that the volunteers were focused on, is nearly 100% ash trees on the street. But there will be additional volunteer efforts throughout the season into the fall. We'll be planting in the fall as well. And you can find more information about that in the release we put out last week. Another notable milestone that's been in the news recently, and that I think speaks to some of the conversations we had here tonight, is that, and this was a surprise to me that we were doing as well on this as we were. Burlington has been named the 4th city in the country per capita in terms of solar installation, which is something that has really come about. We had very little solar in 2011, and we have increased the amount 16 times since then. And Burlington is unique in Northeast cities, making it high onto that list. And I think it really speaks to the efforts the Burlington Electric Department has spearheaded with their solar shopper efforts, with their partnerships with the schools and the university and the airport. And we're gonna, as you know, we'll be talking more about this as we come back with the roadmap to get to net zero. But just thought this would be something the public and the council would want to be clear on. Is an interesting sign of the progress we're making together. Looking ahead, this weekend is maybe the best weekend of the year in Burlington. We will have Little League opening day. I'm going to make it to all 3 leagues if I can. The GBGSL Soccer League starts up this weekend as well. It's also Green Up Day on Saturday. Information is available through the Parks and Rec on some details about how you can get involved in the Green Up Day activities this weekend. And then looking ahead one further week, another great parks event is Kids Day coming up on May 11th. And hope to see everyone out there for that great tradition as well. I think with that, President Wright, I'll turn it back to you.
I'm not talking to you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think we're ready to adjourn. Is there a move to adjourn?
So moved.
Councilor Roof, seconded by Councilor Freeman. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? We are adjourned.